3, 4, 5. Yeah, that's correct. Well, welcome to the first meeting of the new year for Rutherford County. This is the Public Works Solid Waste Special Subcommittee. And tonight we are going to discuss a couple items. One would be create some questions for the five people who made the list on our RFP. We're going to talk about also Landfill Reclamation RFP or request for quote, and then another technology that I want to share with you, which we'll start to pass around the room. I want you to see some of their end product on that and see if that warrants further discussion. So we want to welcome Becky Caldwell, and again, welcome everybody. Mac, hello. Welcome, gentlemen. Seems like it's been many months since we met last, but it's only been a few weeks. So I hope I haven't forgotten everything since the last meeting. All right. If you all will remember that Pratt Recycling, Republic Services, Rockwood, Waste Away, and Waste Management made our short list. There is the city of Murfreesboro has contracted with Griggs & Maloney, a local civil engineer. Well, they do more than just civil. They are contracting and studying Waste Away. The city has spent some money on the report that Waste Away has proposed to us, and they are going to investigate whether they can find an end user, whether it's power or other, to review the Waste Away products. So we may save them to the end of our discussion as we review, to let Griggs & Maloney do their due diligence, and then we'll piggyback off things we learned from that report. But as you know, Pratt Recycling was a kind of a single source item, which was willing to partner with multiple other technologies, and in fact has currently doing so. So there is a lot of possibilities with melding multiple of these technologies together to create a system that would work for us being county and participating cities. But we asked Becky here tonight to kind of give us a rehash of some of the processes that we want in terms of curbside collection and recycling and community outreach, public education, and we're going to talk about those things because those are some of the things we can do and do now, and then we'll get into the landfill reclamation portion of that. And some of the things we need to answer about that is what really do we want to do if we send out a specification or a scope on reclaiming our landfill. And what we haven't really discussed in this group is, if we do that, what is the end deliverable going to be? Are we going to turn it into a blank field, or are we going to create a space for a future county landfill of our own and put a liner down and get into the 21st century with a new cell for a landfill that will suit us for any waste product that we may generate that we cannot recycle or turn into something of use. So we need to address that in order to write a good scope and qualification. So Becky, if you don't mind, if you're ready, I will kind of turn it over with the outline that you and I, or you showed me. I didn't have anything to do with it, but the outline you showed me, and then we'll start our discussion.
I'm going to step right down.
Okay.
Kind of make notes.
All right. What I may do is bring the
It's fine.
You get enough TV time?
Yeah, I get enough airtime as it is. It's so good.
How about that? Is that good? So back when we very first started this, we looked at collection, transportation, processing, and disposal. And the things that we know are fact are, number one, as a county, you have to collect it and you have to manage it residential solid waste, which is generated from your residential households. Number two, we know that we don't have a solution that's considered zero waste at the moment, so we know that we need a landfill component, but how much of that landfill component are we going to be dependent upon? And it depends on what we do in between, what the options are that we choose in between. So looking at that, we had Pratt Recycling who said they were not necessarily on the collection side of it. Yes. So Pratt did not want to do collection necessarily. Pratt wanted to do processing. Primarily of cardboard, paper. So if you pull out cardboard and mixed paper for Pratt Recycling, somebody still has to collect it. Well, if you choose to collect it and you take it to them, then they have it from there. So you deliver it to them, pay them a fee for accepting it at their facility, and then they're going to take it to their paper mill and or some of their other facilities, most of which are down south, and create recycled cardboard and or paper. So think about that one piece. This was your recycling piece that was only recycling. And I think this is the one, I wanted to pull this one out first, number one in alphabetical order, but number two, we kind of got in the weeds when they were speaking only because we were so used to seeing and talking about garbage.
So can we ask questions during this?
Absolutely, please do.
Okay.
That's what this is for.
I really want to, I think they're one of the front runners. So when it says cardboard and mixed paper, who gets who recycles the cardboard and mixed paper? Are we taking them our entire, if we collect it, are we taking them our entire solid waste?
If you collect it, you're going to collect your cardboard and your mixed paper separately.
So that's just what we have other containers for, right? Okay.
And Mac, you're currently collecting those individually as well, right? I mean, already separated at your convenience centers. So they are already collecting those at the convenience center separate. So basically, you'll take the roll-off boxes at your convenience centers that have these materials in them, and you'll take them to Pratt Recycling, to their facility.
It's already recycled.
It's already separated, yes.
Okay.
They'll take it to their plant, and they essentially feed themselves. So when they take these materials, they're actually feeding their own processes to make cardboard, new cardboard boxes, and office paper, mixed paper.
I understand the
Yeah.
impact. I was just trying to understand how do we get it there, because all we got is, I think, Mac, what do you, is it schools that you, tell me the entities you got that you already got it recycled in bins.
We have 15 recycling locations that people bring things to, and then we have the schools, city and county schools, that we pick up recyclables and trash from, and then we have some private businesses that we pick up paper and cardboard from.
So if you were to pull your cardboard mixed paper out, all of a sudden you have a processor. They're here locally. They create jobs. There's economic development surrounding that. And in order for that to be economical for them as a company, you're going to need to consider allowing them to take materials from other places than just your convenience centers. So that's where you start to talk about the public-private partnerships that we've talked about. Where would this be best located in your community that you know better than anyone else? Where would be the best location for a facility like this? How do you help them get there? Do you necessarily have to pay them anything or give them land? Not necessarily. The private companies are here to help you in certain ways, but you also want to maintain a partnership so that you are working together with them. So if they're going to come and build it, you want to be part of where to build it, how big to build it. Do we want to let them accept materials from other places, other private companies? I think that makes sense, because in order for them to come here, that makes good business sense for them. But where is the best place for them to be that the traffic won't be congested in one area that it may already be congested in, which you all know better than anyone?
Like adding questions to this, or?
We can.
I have some questions. I have 3 questions,
Just for Pratt?
just for Pratt. We kind of touched on them a little bit, but
That's there for right now.
pretty much you already got one of them, which is tell us how this project will be funded as to the county, such as land, capital, and equipment. Can you not hear me? Can you hear me? All right. Tell us how this project will be funded as to the county, such as land, capital, or equipment. If we give you this contract, how long will it be before you're operational? You don't have to write these down if you already got them.
I don't know, I don't have the questions. I think they said,
I mean, in 18 months, we'll be operational. 24?
design, permitting, site selection, and construction of a MRF would approximately take 24 months.
Okay. And my last question is, if this is going to be a partnership and we're going to share revenue, what portion of it goes to the county?
So, when you talk about funding the project, do you want to give them land, capital, or equipment, or is there a part of that that you want to contribute to? Is there a part of that that you, what part of that do you want to be, if any?
Well, I think as the county, which I can't speak only for myself, I don't see why we're not wide open to give them everything, you know, the land, the capital, and the equipment, but I'm saying we need to know what they want. Like, are you saying we're not going to do this unless you give us land? We're not going to do this unless you give us capital? That's where I'm kind of, it's ambiguous to me because we haven't really hit those areas. I mean, I know what they want, but we're in the situation now, we need to know numbers, exactly what do you need? Does that make sense?
So what they expect from the county?
Exactly.
For sure. Anybody else got thoughts on that one?
I do.
Yes, sir.
So we have 2 locations, either our current landfill or we have the 20 acres that we have on Singer Road that has the possibility of a rail spur for transportation of product going out. If it's going to be a true P3, we have to be able to come to the table with our portion of what that cost would be. They say that they're willing to build the facility. They're the only one out of the 5 that say that they will build the facility upon execution of the contract. Republic, Waste Management just says, we'll do whatever you want to do. Republic says, we will do it as the growth requires it. They're not committing to putting in a MRF from day one. But if you look on page 5 of your packet that you have, it says Pratt Recycling proposes a percentage of the composite value of a ton of single-stream recyclables, which would be shared once a defined processing fee per ton is deducted, as well as revenue, as a revenue share for source separated by commodities. So, Becky, it's not just corrugated cardboard. I recall during the discussion in their presentation, they talked about plastic because there was a comment of talking about the unclean peanut butter jar, and they said you don't have to worry about that because in the past somebody would contaminate a whole load and we'd send it to the landfill. They said that night that they would send all plastic jars, water bottles, etc., to their facility in Conyers, Georgia, where they clean it, wash it, chop it up, and then send the chopped up processed of the plastic to the carpet mills in Dalton, Georgia, and that's where they make carpet. They have an end product for everything that they recycle. That's why I'm very encouraged by their presentation. Also under transportation, it says on that 5th page, it says Pratt Recycling would use their fleet or roll-off and front-end load trucks to collect recyclables from each county convenience center to Pratt's proposed recycling transfer station or MRF. So what they're proposing is to come in and build a MRF on whatever piece of property we decide to put up. I think the location at Singer, on Singer Road, is much more convenient to 840, I-24, even from other areas of the county, but it's the most accessible. I mean, it's what, mile and a half from the 840 exit?
Mm-hmm. If that.
On that piece of property.
Mr. Mayor, with the Singer property, and I don't know that you've had an opportunity to even consider this, but as far as, one of the biggest complaints that we've had along with Middle Point is the amount of traffic up and down the roads. And if Pratt needed some outside recycling, not trash, but recycling material, do you perceive Singer having enough space for that transportation roundabout to keep from clogging up that artery?
I would think so, because you've got Murfreesboro Road, you've got 840, and then over to I-24, you've got 2 entrances coming into it. And I think we could approach CSX about putting a spur on there and ship most of it to Georgia. It's much better than loading it on Jefferson Pike, which is already crowded.
Well, and at one point we talked about actually identifying what those truck routes would be, specifically of where you don't want the large truck traffic, whether it's your downtown area or wherever that is. That's pretty common. So you might want to consider that as you talk about traffic and where you want the trucks to be. At this point, we're saying Pratt Recycling, we would like for you to come here. We would like for you to take cardboard, mixed paper, and plastics. The 20 acres on Singer Road would be of benefit. They would build the facility, they would provide the equipment, and they would own it. Would they buy the land? Would you still own the land? And this is just me talking through this so y'all can think through specifically as a group, what does that look like, or what do you prefer that look like at the end of the day? Do you prefer they lease this piece of property so that you still own it as a county, or do you prefer they buy the property? Yeah.
As for me, I don't believe we should sell the land to them. I believe we should lease the land to them, because if something happens and they don't work out, which I'm not saying they will or won't, I'm just saying that we at least have that land. I mean, do you understand what I'm saying? If they decide to close the
Sure.
doors, then, it's not like we just have lost our
Right.
land and everything.
Well, and I think that could probably be worked out in the language of the P3 agreement, is that, okay, if you close the door and pull out, your property's on our land, we're going into it as providing land, which we still own. You own the building, you can probably sell the building, but, I think legally that could all be worked out in that agreement. We could buy it from you or whatever else. But I don't think we should give them the property. I think we ought to hang on to it. Right?
Part of the advantage for us, solid waste anyway, is in PPP, is we go to haul our trash. We get to go in the gate when they open. We have to stop going when they close. They tell us what days they're going to open, what times they're going to open, all that. Every facility we go to has that type of setup. Now, we've got a couple that have given us keys to the facility so we can get in when they're not there. But if we are in partners with them, then we have a little bit of say of when they're going to be open. Our operation is different from most commercial operations. Saturdays and Sundays are our big days. That's when most everybody else is closed. And we do have to haul those commodities on the weekends.
Two points. And Mayor, you're right, on step 7 of Pratt's.
Bottles and cans.
Yeah, they do indeed said that they would take plastics and aluminum cans. But in my head, I'm thinking, okay, these folks, their primary business is to produce corrugated boxes, right? So my thought is, they're just a broker then for the metals and the plastics. So they would be just like any of these other technologies that are trying to make a nickel. Well, while you've got all the recyclables coming in, they have the equipment that sorts it, but all they're doing is bundling it up and selling it to somebody who wants the plastics. They have no desire. It's not part of their business line. They're after the paper to make corrugated boxes.
The paper and the corrugated are their primary business. I don't know that they're not using some of the metal or some of the plastics, but I can't tell you what they would be using them for. Do you know, Mac?
When they did their presentation, they spoke about trucking the commodity back to Conyers, Georgia. That is a very huge facility that is very massive and has all the capability of separating whatever you want to separate. So they're already geared up to do that there. Now, our commodities, for the most part of what we do, Rutherford County does, is already source separated. So when we take it, we could take ours to that same facility.
Right.
They wouldn't run it through all that equipment. They wouldn't need to.
Yeah.
It's already separated out. They would just take it to the cardboard baler or to the paper baler, or if we take plastic to waste management, they bale it up straight. The fee on most all the processing fees is to run that equipment to separate. If you bring it already separated, most all of them do not have a fee.
Yeah, okay. One last thing I wanted to point out, what they mentioned and others have mentioned, and what we need to clearly define, because it has come back to haunt us on a current agreement we're in, is they've proposed a 25-year operating agreement.
Yes.
No matter who or multiple whos we deal with, we've got to have some kind of an end date. It just can't go on what's the word? Whatever he said. Forever, yeah. Perpetuity, that's it. We got to be able to say, hey, we're done at some point in time in the future, if that's the way we want it to happen.
I think in our RFP language, we asked all of them to make a presentation for our 25-year waste stream, who wanted to handle our 25-year waste stream. But as in any contract, we would make sure that there's an out clause. that if we decide we don't want to do business with them anymore, we don't like them, then we give them proper notice, then we get out. And I'm sure they would want that same out clause as well. It becomes a legal contract. But I think the thrust was to see who was truly interested in handling our waste stream. Things may change in 10 years. You know, we may be making diamonds out of trash, Chairman. You know, 12 years from now, we burn it up, and, you know, who knows?
So when you talk about shared revenue, does that mean just the revenue that you get in from the backside when they sell commodities, or or does this mean that maybe you deliver your separated materials at no charge? You know, think that through as far as the questions you may want to ask as far as the revenue model and the benefits for the county.
All right.
And it could be both.
What they don't pick up at our convenience centers with their own trucks. So from schools or wherever recycling facilities we have around the county and cities, we could send that to them on our own trucks or make an arrangement for them to pick it up. And part of the shared revenue is they would do that for free.
Well,
Could be.
Mr. Chairman, as we continue this conversation and we're looking at this, keep in mind, we want to include the other cities.
Right.
Met with the mayors today at 1 o'clock, and they all committed around the table in here in 205 that they're all in. So I think they're committed to bring their resources as well, you know, whatever's collected in City of Murfreesboro and Smyrna, Laverne, and Eagleville. You know, it's not just us, and if there ever is that desire to, you know, I don't think, of course, it may get challenged on the Jackson law, but let's just say that the courts rule that they still can continue dumping at Middle Point. We have 6 years, or 7 years, whatever the time. It could be 4 years, based on the space. However, if we ever want to eliminate other trash from other counties coming into this county, we all have to be depending upon what's generated in Rutherford County, and it'll never work. I mean, they would never sign a contract in the P3 if it's just based on our waste stream for Rutherford County. It's got to be the whole county. You can't pay off the construction of it. It takes 2 years. I don't know how many $1 million to build that MRF would take, but they have to see some return on their investment. So that's why.
And maybe you even identify which counties, you know, just the counties that touch Rutherford would be the counties that you would expect they would accept other recyclable materials.
Right.
Mr. Mayor, since you opened up you meeting with the mayors, then I have a question.
Yes, sir.
So if we're going to be negotiating deals with the other entities, cities, municipalities, and yet in the paper, Murfreesboro is starting their own relationship and feasibility study with Waste Away, are they going to be with us, or are they doing their own thing?
Well,
because how are we going to be able to negotiate when we don't know whether our biggest city is going to be with us or not?
Sure, that is a good point. We talked about that. They didn't know some of the things that we already know because we've made a trip to Waste Away, but they say they're in. I think they're just trying to figure out, because of EPA had signed off by saying that they could burn the pellets made by Waste Away, but they were unaware of what we had found out of it burning up the liners of boilers, because there's metal flakes inside of some of their pellets. So they want to investigate that as well. But I think they're going through to do that due diligence to see if there is that opportunity. We invited them to come tonight and for any other point in time. in the future. But what I shared with them today was that we'll probably try to narrow this down to after we bring them in for these next 5, Mr. Chairman, we'll bring them in, interview them again, ask questions, and then try to narrow it down to the top 2 or 3. We may not want to do business with just 1. We may want to do business with 2 or 3. Now, I do know that Republic, as stated that night, they do business with Rockwood, and they do business with Pratt. They do business, they said it's been successful in some states with Pratt, and maybe like Louisiana, and hadn't been successful. It just depends on the region, on whether they're successful. So there could be 2 or 3 companies that we're going to interview that might be willing to share with each other. Now, Rockwood, if you recall, that guy, Lincoln, started right here in Rutherford County, taking shingles and grinding up shingles with Vulcan, I believe. Now, Becky and Steve and I went over to Rockwood last Wednesday and watched a new thing called a Terminator. They take all kind of they take tires, they take pallets, anything, and it just grinds it up, and they recycle. But we saw trucks from far away as Illinois, Indiana, Kentucky were bringing products into Rockwood. And they're primarily a C&D facility. So that's what you'll see in their proposal to us. They want to take all of our C&D. Sheetrock, lumber, they'll take big stumps, tree stumps, and grind it up. Now, we were informed today that the city of Murfreesboro, starting August 1st, they're not going to be picking up leaves, brush on the side, out at your curb. Everything's got to be in a brown paper sack.
So for Pratt, what else would you all, what else have we missed, or what else are you all curious about, just so we have a comprehensive list?
Before we leave this subject of the 20 acres at Singer Road to lease, my opinion would be we would need to put a clause in there. If it's going to be for a 25-year agreement, we would not allow it to be subleased to anyone else.
Good point. It says here that they would use enclosed tractor trailers to be used for transporting the single stream commodities, whether it be aluminum and they would be totally enclosed, not just with a tarp, but they were very excited about the rail spur.
Anything else about shared revenue? Any other thoughts on Pratt? And I'm going to stick them right over here at the end so we can add to them as we look at the others.
While she's doing that, let me share a little experience with you. This coming Wednesday will be my 14th anniversary of being in this job. When I took this job, we had a private company that hauled our recyclables for us. And we were on track, because it's near the budget season, on track to spend $300,000 to pay him to haul all the recycled commodities out of our centers. And we were on track to take in $72,000 in recycled commodity rebate. I got a call from the gentleman on a Friday afternoon, said, "I'm going bankrupt. I'll get you through the weekend. Best of luck." So we started hauling those commodities ourselves. At that time, I had a driver that would do anything you wanted to do as long as it wasn't hard, it wasn't illegal, and it wasn't unethical. So I had him run the recycles in the daytime. I ran them at night. We got a feel of what to do. We went to all the people that we're hauling to now. At the end of the next budget year, not only did we not spend $300,000 to pay him to haul it, we generated $363,000 in rebate commodity. Made me look like a hero. Where I'm going with that is when you farm this stuff out, if they're going to go pick it up in their truck, then your rebate is going to be a lot less than what it would have been because they've got to cover their trucking cost. So when we look at that, I'm saying we need to look, definitely we need to look, but we need to compare the cost to see if it's actually going to be the right thing.
Do I recall correctly that they felt like at some point that they might be able to make a 40% reduction
That's from,
in our carbon footprint?
just by taking the recyclables out, and on page 7, they say they take, we'll take plastics 1 and 2, plastics 3 and 7, glass, mixed paper, cardboard, steel, tin, aluminum, and mixed metals. Just by recycling that, we'll take 40% of our county waste stream, which negates the need for Middle Point to expand, in my opinion.
But that's also going to be where our educational piece comes in, where we teach our public why they need to do the right thing.
Right.
So in alphabetical order, Republic would be the next, but because we've talked about Rockwood, let's talk about them next. Only because we already brought them on. So we talked about collection, we talked about transportation and disposal, but we've touched on processing with Pratt, and now we're going to touch on processing with Rockwood. So you're starting to pull those materials out. You've pulled out your cardboard and your mixed paper. You've pulled out some of your plastics. Rockwood primarily deals with construction and demolition, not necessarily residential, because not a lot of that is generated residential. But they'll take anything that's coming through from a roll-off company, regardless of who's hauling it or collecting it, separate it, and manage it at their facility.
Do we know what impact the C&D has on our waste stream presently?
In 2018, there were 750,000 tons of construction and demolition in Middle Tennessee. That was 21 counties right here in the core of Middle Tennessee. Most all of that was going to Middle Point Landfill, Waste Management's Cedar Ridge Landfill down in Marshall County, or Waste Management's West Camden Landfill over in Benton County. Because as our county landfills that were typically construction and demolition landfills, as those reached capacity, which yours did, all of a sudden those materials were no longer put in a construction and demolition debris landfill. They were mixed with MSW, or municipal solid waste. So it all became garbage, and it all started to fill up extra space in the landfill, in any of the landfills. So this would be pulling those materials out. This would be encouraging. I don't know what that looks like permit-wise. You know, Nashville, and I'll have to look at their specifics, but they're looking at something with their C&D that when you purchase a permit to build or to remodel a building of any sort, certain sizes, you pay a certain amount, but if you prove that you've recycled a certain percentage of what you either, you know, as you either take down a building, remodel a building, or build from the beginning, you show them by receipt of a scale ticket how much you actually recycled, and then you get credit back on your permit. That's
Have
something
any idea what our C&D is now? I mean, we don't collect C&D in our convenience centers, correct, Mac?
Correct.
Okay, so what do we have to offer them? Because we don't do any C&D that we deal with. So how is this solution, what do they want from us when we have nothing? We don't have that much to give them, so.
The big thing for companies like this is going to be location. So I've said to you all before, if you have a Pratt Recycling here, and you've got private companies in your community that are collecting residential recyclables, all of a sudden, do they have to drive to Nashville? Do they have to drive to Conyers, Georgia? Or can they stop off at Singer Road in Rutherford County and Murfreesboro and drop their load so that they can go right back to their customers and continue collecting for efficiencies.
Mr. Harris, let me help with that answer. I won't be able to give you the full question, but when we were collecting C&D material in our centers, that material went to Middle Point just like trash. We did not take it to our landfill. And the reason for that is we could dump it at Middle Point for free. If we dumped it at our landfill, it cost us the operational cost of the equipment to bury it. And it took up the airspace. So it's actually cheaper for us to take it over to them. When we discontinued accepting debris in February of 2018, we were taking in a year what Middle Point took in a month. So when you move our C&D waste to Middle Point, which most of that's what happened, their 12-month year went to 11-month year for trash.
They did say Wednesday that they're taking a few tires. They will be in the future, near future, they'll be in a better position. Maybe they're trying to acquire the equipment to handle more tires, but they're taking it limited right now. But that Terminator that they used, that we went to view, it strips out grinds up the steel belts and the rubber and everything. So what do they do with that rubber after they grind it up with that Terminator, Becky? Did they say?
It depends. Some places will mix it with asphalt. Some places will.
They do that with shingles.
Yeah. Some places will use it for road cover. Even some landfills will use that at times. It depends on what the regulations are.
And of course, they went into a P3 with the city of Lebanon. Rockwood did, and they have a waste-to-energy plant for the city right across the road. If you know where the Cracker Barrel headquarters is on Hartman's
Aries Energy.
Yeah, Aries Energy. And of course there was a big pile of black stuff, and I thought it was the tires, but it's actually the byproduct of what they send over there and burn. It comes out of their burning of that biochar. And they have an end product for that somewhere.
A lot of people are using it for soil amendment.
Gotcha.
So here's your question. Did I pose it correctly? If I didn't, say so. You're good. I saw that.
So we have an idea where Pratt might be with construction debris. Have any idea where that would congregate, I guess you could say?
Oh, you'd have to transport it. Right now, we're doing it for free, right, Mike? The C&D, but people in town, all your contractors are having to pay to take it to Middle Point. We don't collect it at our facility, any of our convenience centers.
If we put Pratt at Singer Road, then you're saying put this where, right? Is there a location in mind?
Or I threw out today in the meeting while we look next door to where the city has, and they grind their wood waste and other items. They have 25 acres over there. Put it all in one location. If they were dinner in the P3.
Yeah, I was going to ask Mac if hypothetically, if Pratt or if a MRF was at Singer Road, could the C&D go to Singer Road as well? In your opinion, would 20 acres, or Jay may know, would 20 acres be able to have the turnaround space, the handle all the logistics?
I'm going to say yes, somebody with a good engineering mind could probably pull that off, but as a trucking operation, we would hate it because you're being in a tight area. I would suggest that you look on the south side of town to do a grinding operation.
Separate C&D from this MRF.
Yes.
As Rockwood, the reason I brought that up, Rockwood's proposal was more of a larger commodity could be dumped on their site. So we're taking, just kind of draw that back to C&D with Rockwood. Okay.
I wasn't suggesting our piece of property, I was suggesting the city's piece of property across the road.
Correct, where they currently are mulching.
Yes, sir. They have 25 acres there, I believe.
And you
Yeah,
said the south side.
That's what Darren told us today.
Yeah, the city has some property on the south side that they purchased. It could be for the transfer station, so you may want to be near that piece of property.
Because Darren said today that they are going to start opening up to allow contracting businesses to bring some of their C&D there, which they're currently not doing that.
Sorry, take C&D where?
For their mulching facility on
The
Florence.
city's going to start grinding stuff other than,
Yes, sir. Yeah, there'll be a fee.
they may utilize, okay, they're considering having the equipment to grind construction debris
Sure.
in addition to the wood.
I don't know if they said construction debris, but they were going to grind and open up for people to come in and bring brush and stuff from like your folks doing yard waste and all that sort of stuff. There's a ton of those folks out
Commercial
there.
yard
Am I right
guys.
on that?
Okay. I may be mistaken on the C&D, but they're going to open it up and start charging and letting commercial folks bring their stuff there.
Yes.
Remind us, what is Rockwood's output? If they're taking C&D, what are they?
They
The shingles, I know
have,
they're doing some asphalt.
Says they do 30,000 tons of wood waste, vegetation, and tires annually.
And what is the byproduct, and is the byproduct just simply shipped? That was,
they do some composting. They do some erosion control. They do some trail cover in different places. What else do they do?
Greenways.
They've got lots of options.
Since we're talking about location, remind me, we have 3 properties that when I'm thinking of negotiating, I think of 3 properties: Singer Road, Florence Road, and the landfill. We have some stuff out there at our county
on
landfill.
Singer
Singer
and
and
Florence
Florence
are
is the same property. It's on the same.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
So we got 20 acres, and then we got some at the landfill, right?
Yes, sir.
Does it make sense to put something like that at the landfill?
If we're talking about doing business with 2 or 3 different companies, then we got to have 2 or 3 different options.
Sure.
So, question for Mac or Becky. What is your best guess on C&D waste and a company like Rockwood? How much of that do they ultimately turn into something that they can sell, and then how much will ultimately have to go back into a landfill?
Most of their C&D waste in the past has been, they may have changed a little bit, but it was containerized stuff. Nissan would get in big pieces of equipment in large crates. Well, that's all engineered lumber, and it's fairly dry. So they would take it to Rockwood and grind it up and make mulch. Well, if you're going to make mulch, you want some moisture, but not as much as tree debris has. So that was the advantage to that. To pull off something like this, it would be more of an educational type process. To where all your wood products go here, your sheetrock goes here. You get them to source separate from where your collection point is. That way, when you pick it up and start trucking and you know where that load goes, there's going to be some cross-contamination. Always will be. But in an instance like that, if we were actually going to reclaim our landfill, develop some of that property, then now you've got enough storage capacity, for a lot of stuff coming in at one time, tornado, to store all that stuff and to grind it later. TDEC regulations and permits, you can store stuff for up for a year, and then you've got to dispose of it. You got to bury it or burn it or whatever you're going to do.
So, for my own curiosity, so the hundreds and hundreds of open container trailers that are on every single family home being constructed right now across the city and county, that's a combination of wood, shingles, hardy board, drywall, PVC, block, you name it. Anything that goes in the house, there's pieces and parts. So that's picked up and taken where, do you think? Or if we worked with Rockwood, would that go to Rockwood and they sort all that?
Could. I think you'd be better off to sort separate to where you have the wood products, the masonry separate, and that type stuff. But a lot of the home builders now are doing a much better job than they did back 20 years ago of buying the right amount of material. Or some of them that's building several homes in one location, they move leftovers to the next one.
Yeah.
I don't think any of them actually dig a burn pit and burn it any longer.
No.
My aunt lives, there's a little area between her and the house next door, and it was built back for those permits, and it's a huge sinkhole right now where all that stuff, when it burned, it's settled out and messing with her foundation.
So Becky, do you, because I'm in a huge big name subdivision with big national, I got D.R. Horton down the street, I got Fox, I got all the big developers around me. And there's hundreds of these big open containers. And then what doesn't get filled with construction debris, the neighbors sneak over at night and dump their mattresses and TVs and everything else in them. So the question is, where does that go? Does that go to Middle Point now? Or would somebody like Rockwood take those, dump it, sort it?
So what they do now is they take those boxes, they have some boxes of their own, they have a few collection sites of their own, but they also take from other places, other haulers like you're mentioning. They actually take the boxes, they're paid at their gate for a tip fee, they separate it, and then they actually use Smith County landfill because their home base is Wilson County, so it's closer to Smith County landfill. So anything that's left over that's not usable or doesn't have a home that's better than, anything residual would end up in the landfill.
And those folks pay a cubic yard, they just pay Rockwood, and it goes
By the
away.
ton. Mm-hmm.
And Rockwood has to deal with and they're probably $7, $8 a cubic yard or something.
The last number I knew was right at $60 a ton. Mm-hmm. Any other thoughts or questions on Rockwood?
No, but I've just got I almost need to just pull that, and I don't know if anybody, I want to know what this group, I want to see if we can vision work what we want to see. Do we want to see, do we have to go through each of these and ask the same questions, or can we as a committee try to get down on this board what we want to see? Do we want to see a transfer station? Do we want to see a MRF? Do we want to see our landfill? Can we, I need to see what y'all's vision is. Is it, right now, I don't know what, or it stop me if this is still too premature. I may be trying to create an organization that we're just not there yet.
That's a great question. I think my vision is still under development as
Based on how these guys.
This is getting fine-tuned and where the chips start to fall into place. I've got a global desire, But I don't know if we can afford it, but there's still a lot of rocks to turn over right here in these discussions that will help me formulate where I think 1 to 3 technologies blend together. And again, the big question is, okay, somebody big in a P3 to partner with and invest a lot of money, they're going to want to take materials from other counties, and we're going to have to be open to that discussion, right?
But if you're not open to that discussion, you got to look at what it's going to cost you not to do something. Landfill reclamation, I'm convinced anyway, if we don't dig it up, we're going to be spending money on that landfill forever. So that's one thing we need to clean up, the sins of our fathers, or whatever you want to call it. But it can be done. Is it going to be expensive? Sure. But it's still going to be cheaper than not doing it.
So
That's kind of where,
And when you talk about price, some of these folks may simply want some support in coming here. This is a good location for them south of Nashville. You don't have to go through Nashville traffic to get here if you're on the south side. So all of a sudden, if you help them get here, it may not cost you so much money other than to be able to find a good location for them. Yes, you'll still be accepting things from other cities or counties or other private companies. Maybe you identify what counties that material is generated in, but you're giving them an opportunity to expand their business so they can get the return on investment. So it may be as simple as, here's a good location for you, regardless of whether you own it or not. But here's a good location, here's a corridor by 840 that makes sense.
So, and I don't know that I'm going to phrase this correctly, but are we wanting to get out in front of TDEC's decision? Because from where I sit right now, until we know if the expansion is actually going to occur or not, are we trying to put the pieces in place for either decision? Because I assume, Mayor, and you correct me, if they expand, we still get free residential disposal. If they don't expand, then we've got to come up with some robust alternatives, be it Pratt and some of these other entities. So I guess I want to know is, are we going to make a decision prior to February of 22, which is my understanding when TDEC is going to make their decision. Is that correct?
yes, sir, they are going to make their decision in probably February 22. They're going to give them that long to do their due diligence. What Ms. Matupi has told us, Jacqueline Matupi, TDEC, she will host the public hearing prior to that before the commissioner makes their decision. If TDEC does allow, the commissioner does allow them to continue to expand and the Jackson law does not apply to them, then I would say that's probably going to go to court either way, whether it's denied or whether it's allowed. If they're allowed to continue to expand, that still doesn't relieve us of our obligation, and we shouldn't take our eye off of that. That's going to give them plenty of land to expand upon, but we still have a responsibility to our citizens to recycle and do the right thing, whatever the cost is going to be, because it's never endless. I mean, at some point in time, we gotta start recycling. Instead of just taking stuff out and dumping it, even though it's free, there's got to be some incentive to change the culture of how we think and how we process. For those who went out to San Jose on the trip, they charge $10 just for one bag of trash. If you don't do it responsibly, it makes you change your buying habits and makes you think about protecting the next generation. You go to Europe, you don't find trash. You don't find, trash on the side of the road, and you get fined. It's just not acceptable.
But if the expansion's allowed, how do we motivate our citizens to go to that effort when
Yes, sir.
when they can just dump it?
It's going to have to be through the government requiring, that their trash is not free anymore. And I know we'll get criticized if they're allowed to, our contract that Ms. Allen put in place back in 1995, we can still dump for free as long as there's space. But, we have a responsibility to recycle, and I think by imposing through the governments, city councils, I think they all agreed in there today, we have that responsibility. Instead of just taking it out and dumping it. And they can, through city ordinances, different than what we do as the county government, they can impose through ordinances requiring people, as the city is already imposing what it's costing them to come by and pick up trash. They're at $9, they're thinking maybe $20. Every citizen is going to have to pay at some point in time.
Commissioner Blair, before we closed our landfill, we were budgeted to take in, I don't know, $600,000 or so, but we were taking in $800,000 a year. Our price to dump C&D waste was more expensive than our neighbors was. But those customers came to us to pay more money because they could go in, they could get across the scale, dump their load, get back on the scale and out in 15 to 20 minutes instead of waiting an hour and going up and down a steep hill. So there's an opportunity cost there. Commissioner Harris was asking, do we have C&D? We don't collect any today. I guarantee if we changed that, opened that valve up, we'd have more than we could handle tomorrow. So we can get it. And along with what the mayor said, it's our duty to be able to be prepared to take care of our residents. So if a resident is building a home, then the C&D waste gets counted as that resident's waste. They didn't even purchase the house yet. But the waste coming from restaurants and the big box stores and things like that, that's not our responsibility. So just the residential side is what we need to look at. But think as a resident, everything the last month that you had to throw away, that's what we need to be prepared to have a home for.
I have a comment. I can see Mr. Blair's concerns. I've had some of the same thoughts myself. Do we really need to continue on this road or not, depending on the outcome of TDAC's decision? If they should choose to deny, I would say every minute we have spent on this right here up to that point will be well spent, because I feel like the mayor said a while ago, until the space was full, we won't determine if it's full, Republic will. And they could very easily call the mayor and say, we're full the day after the decision, and then where will we go with our trash? I know we probably can't get it all worked out in that length of time, but every minute we spend on it is going to be very well spent. Now, going to the other side of that conversation y'all had, like you had, how are you going to convince the public to do this if it does pass and the expansion is granted? I ain't got a clue there. I don't see how we can convince them to pay when they know it could be thrown away for free. I know the recycling issue is a warm, fuzzy thing, but money's more important to 90% of the people, because most of them have limited amounts. I've got some reserve there. If we can educate the younger people coming up, so be it, to teach them to recycle because it's the right thing to do. But it's going to be hard to teach the older people. Very hard.
Mac, what was in your budget? 6.5 million, 8 million?
Our operating budget?
Yes, sir.
Just barely less than $6 million for this budget year.
Okay, so it's still costing the county taxpayers to pick up their trash at all of our convenience centers. But at what point in time, we don't have a plan B. What if Republic is full in 4 years or 5 years at Middle Point? Where's our plan B? We don't have any money budgeted. What's it going to cost us to truck it? We have 3 locations. We have Camden down on the Tennessee River. We've got Lewisburg, Waste Management, or we got Bi-County and Clarksville. And how many trips of trash can we take out of this county and go to those 3? That's our only plan B, and we don't know what it's going to cost. We have to be prepared if that comes down and it says they can't expand, where we're going to take ours. And they become full.
If we were really lucky, traffic, no truck problems, anything like that, we could probably get 3 round trips from here to Marshall County Landfill and back in an 8-hour day.
Coffee County has taken theirs to Athens in Ray County. They get 2 long, open top, long haul trucks. They get 2 trips a day of trash. They go over Mount Eagle Mountain, through Chattanooga, and up to Athens. That's a long way to haul our trash.
Start to look at the alternative transportation.
Transportation, a rail is sounding better all the time.
Wayne, you bring up a fantastic question. It reminds me of the old saying, to have peace, you must prepare for war. It's kind of what we're doing.
Yes.
If you have a plan on paper, to whatever extent you have a plan, there is some peace of mind there that you at least have some of the pieces figured out. So that if tomorrow, if you pull up to a landfill and the gate's closed, regardless, there's going to be a touch of panic of this is different, this is a change, this is not normal, but you'll have something to fall back on as a plan. It's just like emergency preparedness. It's just like, preparing for a special event, which this would be a very special event.
Well, I'm going to comment, Wayne, and I like what you said. I think that this committee needs to go in 2 directions. Number 1, we need to do, and it's real, to me it's simple, but to maybe y'all it's not. We need to prepare for TDAC to go against Republic. We need to prepare for TDAC to go with Republic. It should be 2 plans. And, one of the things that I've always concerned me is that if TDAC goes with Republic, and then all the stuff we talked about, we don't want people dumping their trash here. All that is no longer in our control. We have no control over that. And so that changes the entire dynamics of what we got to do. Now, if they go against them, then we got to be prepared and have a plan put together to go forward without them. And I think that's what we got to do. Instead of, looking at this, we need to look at it in those 2 areas, because I am concerned. That decision, Commissioner Blair, no matter what happens, it's going to be all this, everybody's going to go crazy and all that stuff. No matter what happens in that meeting, some side's going to sue the other side. It's inevitable. So based on the way the courts are right now, based on my personal experience, you're looking at 3 to 4 years. Really are. And that's why that's tough on us. That puts us in a bad spot. But I think we need to have a plan. If they win, we need to have a plan if they lose. And that's how I'm going to go about it. But, if y'all have anything else, I understand, but I want to have a plan for each one. So no matter what happens, we're ready.
Becky and I talked last week, and I suggested a direction, and she's kind of going that direction. We can start recycling better. We can educate a whole lot better, and we can clean up our landfill. We don't have to wait and see what anybody else is going to do. along with those things, we've already gotten the educational piece started, which we agreed that was one of the most important things. So we need to start training and teaching our general public how to do it and why. Most of them don't understand why. If you get them to understand why, they may not like it, but at least they understand it. So at least you can get them to do that. So that's our biggest steps today. I agree with Commissioner Harris, reluctantly. We need to plan to go both directions because we don't know which direction we're going to be. But we're going to be a little bit of both directions anyway. But if we can get past the educational piece, the landfill reclamation piece, and let's do better at recycling, we're going to be further down the road no matter what happens with garbage because you're going to have less garbage.
The mayor brought to you, this thrifty group that's in all of our convenience centers now, either in a small box, maybe you've seen them, or we've got 3 tractor trailers, 54 footers, that are at Sand Hill, Weekly, and Rock Crusher. And we toured those the other day, myself and the mayor, to see how they were set up, what was going on, and what's happening. Of course, they've had some labor issues as well, just like everybody else. But they had 2 out of the 3 full, getting ready to be removed, of the 54 footers. Can you imagine 2 54 footers full of clothes and furniture that's not going to the landfill? That's recycling. And then you had the other one that was halfway full and getting ready to be redone. And then the small ones have already been picked up numerous times. So all of that, just one little, it might be one pebble in the water, but it's part of recycling that's happening and happening almost immediately at every center. So that's not including our cardboard and plastic and everything that we've been doing for years. So it's working with this continued educational piece that's being put together and getting ready to go into our school systems here starting the fall. And with these other ideas, we're going to have a pretty extravagant recycling program working in Rutherford County.
Well, see, that one's working with basically no advertisement because we're allowing them to get up and running before we pushed it out there. But they're already, it's just the general public wants it.
Well, and we're starting to peel those pieces away of this onion of stuff, and we started to say, okay, well, if you peel away the cardboard, and you peel away the paper, and you peel away the textiles, and you peel away all of a sudden you're peeling those pieces away. So it's less that's going to a landfill. Yes, sir?
Yeah, I'm glad when Mr. Nolan mentioned, talking about education, when I turned on TV, Channel 3, I saw his picture, he's talking about that, so I relate to the public, they understand very well.
And most of the time people want to do the right thing, they just don't know what the right thing is. And if you show them what the right thing is, then that's great. And if they choose not to do it, then they just need to chuck it in the trash. There is a warm, fuzzy feel good with recycling, but at some point you say, okay, well, it has to be done this way. If it's a picture, if it's a video, the pizza box needs to look like this or it's trash. The peanut butter jar needs to look like this or it's trash. Pictures tell 1,000 words. I think we finished with the other. I think we'll come back to these, but as far as a timeline, these were the things, so y'all started to kind of dive into, if we're going to make a decision now, these are 2 things, and Mac already mentioned them, but these were 2 things I wrote down so we didn't forget, things that can be done now that don't necessarily depend on TDEC's decision, one way or the other. There's your collection piece, Pratt, Rockwood. So basically, we're starting to look at different things for different materials in different places throughout the county. I want to look at Republic and Waste Management together or independent?
Can we do wasteway?
Do what?
Can we do wasteway first before we get into
sure.
2 big ones?
Absolutely.
I've got a few questions I'd like to be prepared to ask them. I would like to hear again, and I know I've toured it twice, why did they stop taking the recyclables and making their park benches, fences, and et cetera from what they were recycling? Why did they quit that? Number two, when they built the plant in Aruba, I'd like to hear again, why was it shuttered and it's been vacant for 5 years? And of course, I really like the product. I mean, it doesn't smell, they still have no end product for the fluff or the pellets. Now, they say that EPA has given them the green light to burn the pellets. However, we had heard from the Department of Boiler Division and Department of Insurance and Commerce that those pellets, because they have metal flakes inside, burn up the inner walls of the boilers. So that's why nobody's purchasing to be the alternative for coal. Yeah, that's a question. And then my last question would be, you said that you have contracted with municipality, county, et cetera, out in California. Where are you on that? Oh, one more. Because most of the investors into Waste Away were some of the more wealthy citizens, they invested into their company as an investment, then why is Warren County not taking the majority of their waste stream to their plant? Why are they sending it to Athens? Am I correct in that, Mac? So it's kind of like Aruba. They got a plant, but they're not using it. So what made the citizens in Warren County who invested in it not using it? And why did the county government there not using it and sending it all the way to Athens? That's got to be expensive.
Mayor, we had heard 10%, some sort of reduction, 10% or something from TVA. I wasn't too clear about that. There was how did that come about through Waste Away as far as?
TVA is getting a lot of pressure from EPA to go green. And so if they're offering incentives to start producing, this would be good, I would assume. But if you can't use it in some type of alternative for coal for waste of energy, I know it might, but I think sitting in here last year, we talked to the folks from TVA, right? When Commissioner P asked the question from TVA, because he was interested in putting a waste energy plant down in Industrial City in Laverne because there are so many plants, and they said because we live in the valley, they sell it cheaper than what we can build a facility and sell it back to the grid. I think that's what he said.
So the metal that's in the fluff, I guess prior to hearing that, I kind of envisioned a little bit some of the testimony from our open meeting about the land being scarred to produce soil for cover material. Mm-hmm. And I kind of envisioned this fluff as an opportunity for composting and maybe rejuvenating that land that has been, all the soil has been taken away down to the bedrock. So does this metal that that's ruining the boilers, does that keep us from being able to utilize that as a composting material?
I think that'd be a good question to ask that.
If there's metal in it, that would potentially be considered litter, I would think. If it's got flecks of plastic, I mean, that's what they've said about other processes that have had, remnants of plastics or metals or something that you normally wouldn't see that would break down in the soil or add soil amendment, nutrients to soil.
You also have to remember your chemistry. You got little particles of metal that's in just about everything. You got a little bit of aluminum, lead, all that type of stuff. So, it's not actually a piece of metal that's causing the problem that the mayor's talking about. It's the chemicals that's within our natural garbages. Start burning it, and then you break those chemicals out separately.
Becky, Commissioner P. just sent me a email, so he's got 3 questions for Waste Away.
Okay.
Number 1, if the county completely operates the facility, who is getting the tipping fee? If we're operating costs, or does the company still get a percentage? The second one is, does your company have a signed agreement that states TVA will or can use your product? Third question, I think you and Matt can answer this. He goes, why in the RFP proposal, the cost feasibility study for the county is $200,000, but the city is being charged $55,000?
Remember, that proposal was in 3 phases. First phase being $50,000, second phase being, I don't know, $100,000, the third phase being like $300,000 or something like that. Here it is, $50,000 to your first step, $200,000 for your second step, and $500,000 for the third.
Max, since you deal with Wasteway a lot, know so much about them, can you explain to me what you just said? A 55,000 feasibility, can you kind of tell us what that looks like and then tell us what the 200,000 one looks like? I'm real confused.
Okay, when they did their presentation, the way I understood their presentation would that first $50,000 would be spent to see if we have the right commodities to use for the process to make the fuel source, and can they make the fuel source out of it, and do they wind up with a buyer for it? And then the second phase would get you further down the line, and the third phase would be building toward actually having the facility up and running. And then if at the end of the third phase, if you actually purchased the system and had it up and running, then that would be part of what you paid would be part of the purchase price.
And Ms. Caldwell, since I know you're doing some consulting work for the city, will they be sharing those studies with us?
That I don't know. I'll be glad to ask the question.
Thank you.
I have a question I'd like for you to put on that board for Waste Away.
Okay.
They're located in the nursery capital of the world. Why isn't their compost being produced in a huge fashion for the nursery growers and all, because there's millions of containers of plants potted up there every year. There's bound to be an issue there somewhere. Most of the container plants up there are potted in a non-soil substance anyway for weight, for shipping. So, you know, why aren't they all using it?
Anybody else got thoughts on waste away? So we've got several questions for them. Are there any of these questions that we need to back up and ask any of the others as well? I think the park benches are pretty specific. The plant in Aruba. I don't think that there would be anything as far as in the process of either Rockwood or Pratt that we would be looking at as far as metal shavings. This could potentially be a question for, we know what Pratt does with their output. We could potentially have the same question, where are you with customers using pellets? Well, where is Rockwood with customers? What are they using the output for? What is the output? You know, is it making compost? Who are his end customers? That could be a question similar for Rockwood. Warren County is very specific. This is a good question for any of the facilities. If the county operates it, who gets the tip fee? If the county owns it, who gets the tip fee? What, you know, what is it if who owns the land, who owns the property? Well, who owns the land, who owns the facility, who owns the equipment, who's operating it? And so how does that then shake out as far as revenue and expenses for any of these? TVA is pretty specific to them, and then obviously number 8 is as well. Any other thoughts about waste away? Now we'll talk about Republican Waste Management. Do y'all want to talk about those independent or together? Okay. Processing, and I think Republic did something with landfill. I don't know that it was reclamation.
Republic was for it, but Waste Management didn't want to be involved in land reclamation, landfill, if I'm correct.
So for collection, Waste Management only wanted to be involved in curbside collection, whereas Republic said any of convenience centers, curbside, or a combination of the two. So essentially, you're going to think about, when you start to talk about curbside, who does that include? And if you start to look at the cities, Murfreesboro already provides that service at the curb for residential waste. And does curbside collection, what does that look like for the unincorporated county area? Or does that make sense for any of the unincorporated area that may have a subdivision or something like that that's been built on the outskirts of the cities?
If you're looking at a subdivision like is going in right before you get to Rockville, there's 300 on one side, 200 on the other, then I think if you had over a certain number of homes, it made sense. But it's hard to curbside in the county when you got a half a mile between each driveway and there's no curb.
Right.
You know, but it does make sense when you have a
I think if
higher
you
population subdivision.
look at curbside, I think you start to say, okay, a subdivision of what size? Is that 50 houses? Is that so much density? Is that so many miles within city limit, you know, on the outskirts of city limits? What is that defined as? When you start to talk about collection, and there's nothing that says Murfreesboro can't continue to do their own collection, Rutherford County can't continue to do their own collection at convenience centers, and then there's an alternative for Smyrna, Laverne, and Eagleville.
The conclusion today with the mayors, you had about 5 folks on an average picking up, you know, Laverne, Eagleville, Smyrna, Murfreesboro, with Murfreesboro even picking up. You know, you still had these folks coming in and they're paying another company for maybe recycling or maybe for just another garbage pickup so they can get more garbage picked up or whatever. So, yeah, no, just pretty much. I don't know who Gray's is. I don't know who, well, we know Republic, Waste Management. There was a couple others that were a smaller venue, but would still come through in a truck, you know, and had the panels and load up the trash. So, but all of the cities, Eagleville, Smyrna, and Laverne, Waste Management was picking up city, incorporated their city trash.
Is that contracted through the city or through individual residents?
Through the city. That's what they were getting picked up.
So the city has a contract with Waste Management to pick up
Their trash.
the trash within their city limits?
Buildings or their, you know.
Oh, so just city buildings, but not residential waste?
Not residentials, no. The only residential trash that was picked up was Murfreesboro.
And if I may clarify, in all the municipalities of Rutherford, there are essentially 5 dominant collectors: Waste Management, Republic, and 3 smaller independents.
What they
It's fewer than us. I know, I'm sure that's just average or in general.
There's probably a lot of others out there. We don't.
I think Mr. Hercules and Mayor Cole said that Gray was probably one of the larger ones. Brian said he lives over in Scotland Acres, I believe, or close to that. But he said there's probably 5 that comes into his little subdivision. 2 are major, or 3 are major, and then 2 are just kind of mom and pop and got some sideboards on the side of a pickup truck.
Gray's is out of Nashville. I know that. Mm-hmm. They used our transfer station in the city of Franklin. So if they want to do collection, here's their collection piece. Potentially, if they do a MRF or composting, Republic said waste to resource, and then a transfer station, all of those are part of the processing. So they would potentially, for composting, they would potentially maybe contract that piece out. I think waste to resource they might contract out. Transfer station, both of those companies have transfer stations of their own that are owned and operated by them.
We're looking at possibility of options to do with our debris. To keep from having to bring trash in from outside of the county, we need to manage what's generated within the county. And to do that, then you need to basically put out for bid curbside collection and say, company Mr. Dodd, you would pick that up, here's your area, and you will dispose of it where we tell you to. That's the way you manage the trash.
That's what intrigued me when Steve acknowledged there may only be relatively few players to site to do that. That just sounded doable for the first time. I hadn't heard it that doable yet till tonight.
Well, and when you look at a subdivision, how many trucks do you have in the subdivision? Are they all there on the same day? What happens when they're there when the school bus is there? What happens when people are in a rush to go to work? What happens when you're responsible for the streets and resurfacing the streets in your subdivision? And then when you back up from that and you say, okay, well, what if we all had a different day of the week? Well, 5 haulers in one subdivision, you got garbage cans all over the place every week, and heaven forbid if it rains or the wind blows.
That's what they said. They're getting picked up different times of the week. Yeah.
And that's to prevent all the traffic at the same time and the big trucks competing, and so there's a safety mechanism to that, but then you've got cans everywhere.
When I first took this job, I came from the industry side. So I wanted to be able to determine how many Rutherford County residents depended on the convenience centers for their sole source of getting rid of the trash. At that time, there was 13 private haulers operating in this county. So I reached out to each of them to get them to tell me how many homes they picked up a week. The remaining homes would be what would come to the convenience centers. So at that time, it was roughly 22% of the homes did not have somebody picking it up. But on the other hand, you got missed pickup days, you got extra trash, so those that still have curbside collection today still use convenience centers. A lot of them is just for recycling, but they still use it for their bulk items or other things. So if you have curbside collection, you're still going to need the convenience center operations.
So when you look at this list, if you start to talk about collection, well, these are the two that really responded to that. Now, Pratt did say they could do some collection of their own. That just depends on how that, is that from a convenience center? Well, if no one else is servicing them, or if the capacity isn't there for county resources, maybe Pratt picks up some of the boxes in the convenience centers and hauls those themselves. But when you look at a MRF, all of a sudden you have Pratt that wants to build a MRF. We haven't really talked much about compost, but a transfer station is something that may or may not be needed, but it doesn't have to be something. The city has talked of building one, the county could build one, you all could partner with the city of Murfreesboro to build one, or to build 2, one on each side of the county. Truck and train are a combo. Obviously, there's no barge here, but both are willing to look at alternative transportations. I'll tell you, when you start to look at alternative transportation and you look at truck or train, they're both available. They're both readily available throughout Middle Tennessee. What I'll tell you is the trains keep the trucks off the road. Trains reduce the congestion. It's hard to find drivers right now, so all of a sudden you have one engine versus several trucks. But at some point you can haul almost anything you can haul in a truck and a train, if not anything. We know that Pratt has access to the rail. I know that Rockwood has access to the rail. That's an R.J. Corman line. This is a CSX line, where we're talking about on Singer Road. And we know they have that in Conyers as well. And then landfill, we know that obviously Republic has Middle Point, and then Waste Management has Cedar Ridge down in Marshall County and West Camden in Benton County. Now the closest one by miles is Smith County, but we've already determined early on that, that's trying to get through Nashville traffic to get to Smith County, even though it's fewer miles than Marshall County, doesn't make a whole lot of sense efficiency-wise. You have a magic lamp. Now, one of the things Republic did say different is Class 3 landfill, Class 1 landfill, and then actually both, landfill, mining, and reclamation. county will receive a disposal rate for all waste delivered to the Middle Point landfill. Republic will work with the county to evaluate long-term remediation solutions. Should Republic not receive an expansion permit for Middle Point landfill, the agreement to operate the county's landfills would terminate. I think you can see, just like we've talked about materials, you can start to look at what the options are and peel away. Maybe this one. Haven't really talked about compost much. Maybe this one. Maybe the city builds one transfer station on one side of the county builds the other. You all don't have any hauling other than your local collection now, but that doesn't mean there are trucking companies and rail companies out there that you can contract with directly if you want to. These folks are not in the truck or the train business. They would be third parties. So speaking to your point, Commissioner Cush, yes, it adds another layer to your contract, but you're actually choosing. And the landfills we've already talked about. I think this alone shows you that there's room for everybody. There's enough waste for a good number of people to share and share the responsibilities. I think one of the biggest things is to think through what the county wants from these vendors, and is it that you can live with if they locate at a specific location. If they locate it 20 acres on Singer Road or Florence Road, can you live with them accepting materials from other places? And if so, is that from anywhere, or is that just from specific counties that actually touch Rutherford? Those are questions to ask yourself as you start to have those conversations and ask the questions of do you need additional materials than what we have? And if you do, and we allow you to accept materials from other counties, these would be the counties, and by the way, what do we get for that? And if we have you come here, just like you all have hosted the landfill, if you come here and you build in our county, and we host you, is there a host fee involved?
I'm going to address this to the committee. When Waste Management did their presentation and when Republic did their presentation, these are the two takeaways I got. And correct me, or you tell me if I'm off base here. It may have been the mood I was in both nights, but Waste Management to me did not give us a lot of. My perception was Waste Management did not give me a lot of details. They basically said, man, you guys just tell us what you want and we'll do it. That's kind of the takeaway I got. But on the other hand, Republic, the perception I got was, here's what we're going to do, but if we don't get an expansion, all deals off. They were kind of like holding us hostage, is the feeling I got. That unless we can expand, we're not interested in talking to you. And again, maybe it was the mood I was in because of the recent expansion request. Maybe I was looking for a fight. I don't know. But am I interpreting those two presentations incorrectly? Help me out here. What did you guys feel?
No, your interpretation is 100% accurate. It's what we're putting out. We are so open-ended and so broad that it's hard for them to narrow down and even try to give you a price. So this process now should be into narrowing down to where we say, we want this. We don't want that. That way, once we get to that point, they can tell us what it's going to cost. But that's like on the landfill reclamation. You know, if we're going to write out the bid specs, then we put in the bid specs. This is what we expect your deliverables to be, and then somebody can price that.
In other words, if we say to Waste Management, we want you to pick up curbside, this size subdivision, this is a good, identify 5 of those or whatever they are, the density, we would like you to come forward and tell us how or what you would do with composting. We're probably going to look at our own transportation piece, but what about your landfill? They'll come back with a price. This is their a la carte menu, if you will, and then you pluck away what you want.
Well, the thing that kind of turned me off, Mr. Chairman, was when we're public, we ask about putting a MRF in, and of course it states in their proposal that they would wait and see based on single stream flow whether or not, they said they would do it, but it would be sometime once they determined whether it warranted them building that building, whereas compared to Pratt says, we'll come in day one, and put in at least a MRF and start recycling.
Let me give you that exact same analogy that he's talking about from our world. Their world, Republic's world, is we can't build this facility until we have enough recycled commodity.
Correct.
Right. In our world, we can't build a school till we have enough students. We don't build them ahead of time. We wait till we're behind times. And they're going to do the same thing.
And I don't want to confuse this, but if you'll think about customer service, when you go somewhere, you order something, you want it to be the way you ordered it, sandwich, whatever. All of a sudden, what level of service do you want? What type of service do you want? What type and what level of service are you willing to pay for? I mean, there's anything from convenience center straight to a landfill, you just got to find a way to get it there, or everything in between. And that's why this is a tough conversation to have, but it's also a pretty cool place to be, because you can write this to be what you want it to be.
Yeah,
That
because
makes
I think that this stuff right here is base. This is where we're starting off. At what Mac says, Mac, there's always ways to negotiate things. There's always ways. Might not be what we like, it might be exactly what we like, but this is just base. So I'm looking at that as, I agree, I understand where you're coming from. And I don't really, this stuff right here is my base, but then I'm going to go, there's a next phase called negotiations. Then that starts getting a little bit more pinpoint on what we're going to do.
The thing about negotiations is making sure that you know how to compare Republic Services to Pratt, to Rockwood, to Waste Management, to Waste Away, as far as being able to compare what you're going to get apples to apples. Because right now you got a whole fruit salad. So you're looking at what, how do you compare curbside only collection here? Well, the only one you really have to compare it to is curbside here. But you may not know what that looks like specifically unless you ask specifically.
And one of the things that I'm trying to get at is what the mayor said as far as building a recycling center as needed. That word don't work for me. So as far as I'm concerned, it's going to be build now. And if that's something that they don't want to negotiate, then that's something that'd be fine. We move on. But those specific things right there is exactly what I'm talking about. We can get into those once we get past this space. Would you agree with that?
I agree with that. You have to know what your base is for anything. You have to know what the foundation looks like before you can build anything. And the foundation here, so a transfer station, you may depend on one of these larger companies to build a transfer station. I know that the city of Murfreesboro has spoken about a transfer station. Again, maybe you all partner and you all build one opposite of where the city will build theirs, and you all share somehow. You have a tip fee that's equal for each other. You're not just giving, that tip away, but maybe for, $25 a ton, $30 a ton, whatever the number is, those are arbitrary, but county can use the city transfer station, city can use the county transfer station, depending on what side of town you're on. You're looking at a MRF. What type of MRF would this be? How big would this MRF be? What would the footprint be? But what would Pratt offer? And Pratt's a recycling company. Now, Waste and Republic both own and operate MRF facilities, but their primary functions are collection and landfilling. They do have MRFs in some areas where it's more important simply because recycling is required, or, whatever the market requires or whatever the region is asking for. I mean, if their tip fee is $60 at a MRF for recyclables and $80 at a landfill, people are going to recycle. If you charge someone $5 a month for their recycling and $10 a month for their garbage, people are going to recycle. Now, you're going to have to go back and educate them, because they're going to be tempted to put all of their trash in the recycle bin so that they don't have to pay as much. But at some point, you have to back up and say, okay, well, wait a minute, we got to make sure it's clean enough to be a commodity instead of just trash.
Let me run another scenario by you. We build a transfer station. Our transfer station, we build it, it's our scales, and we put our employee operating the scales. We hire a landfill company to run the facility. They're the ones that actually pushes it, and they load the trucks. They push our trash in on this side. Our trash is still going to Middle Point at no cost. So why would they want to come and run that? Okay, they push their trash on that side. Now that opens up a market in this area that they have not had an opportunity for, to take it to their landfill. Those type public-private partnerships is what you need to create to get the businesses up and running.
Any other thoughts?
A discussion with those 3 smaller independents to get an idea of what a density or a number of homes in a subdivision would probably be good information for us to have in terms, of setting a minimum density or homes per subdivision.
And there are industry averages we can look at as well.
Okay.
And part of that's rear load, manual collection, semi-automated. Some of that's automated collection with a side loader. Side loaders can do 800 to 1,200 cans a day.
Question.
Yes, sir.
On the curbside pickup, like he's talking about, are we going to eliminate our private haulers that are in the county?
Do I?
They would become your bidders. We're not going to...
I'm talking about your small people.
Yes. She said the key word. It depends on what truck you're using, but if you put the group of homes out for bid in a route week, then your small companies have just the same opportunities as your large companies to bid on those individual routes.
But if Republic comes in and wins the bid, are all the little private companies excluded on curbside pickup?
If we allow it to go that direction, yes.
How can we control it legally?
We divide it up into bids. Here's the track of homes, and here's track A, B, C. Bid it. Now, can the same company bid and win all bids? Yes, that's possible. It's not very likely, though.
Or you break the area up, you may break the county up into 4 sections or 5 sections. This section becomes the first bidders, this section becomes the second bidder, this section becomes the third bidder. That's a form of franchising that's been done other places. So that those folks they may not be the customers they've always serviced or in the area they've always serviced, but they'll have a identifier or a defined area.
Steve, I'm just thinking out loud with you, or we just, go ahead, or we just don't dictate curb pickup, we just simply give people a place to bring it. And then that private hauler can, either our MRF or our transfer station or our facility may be more economical for that person to bring it, if we don't do curbside, because I ain't worried about those guys. But we may get in the trash reception business, potentially. It may be part of our program.
Do a transfer station.
And just say, here it is, guys. Y'all keep picking it up. Again, I'm getting down into the specifics again, but there may be an alternative to that.
So the city of Franklin built our own transfer station. We opened it to private hauling companies. They paid us a tip fee. They would come to us even when they had to pass the landfill just by 5, maybe 10 miles at the most, because they could, again, get in and out of the facility. We were all concrete. Trucks didn't have as much wear and tear from gravel, dirt, roadways. The wait was shorter. So all of a sudden you had more efficiency. Time is money. And so the quicker you can get back out on your route and the less maintenance and repairs you have on your truck, you're willing to pay a little more to get in and out of that facility than you would. That's their comparison. During the tornadoes in February, March, there was a time when there was a tip fee that changed, and immediately everyone dispersed because they knew that this cubic yard rate equated to this amount per ton, and all of a sudden, when this cubic yard rate got to the limit, those trucks went elsewhere. They went to the next closest facility because they were saving money. They knew if they went 7 miles out of the way, they were still saving money. If they went 10 miles out of the way, not so much. It's kind of a fine science, if you will. Yes, sir.
Great to have these meetings on television and have text. Metro still reserves a percentage of the route service area for small businesses, especially female and minority owned.
Oh, did your alarm go off too?
Yeah.
So regardless of, we've talked about what happens if TDEC decides one thing or another, what happens timing-wise, what happens if Republic decides to close the landfill tomorrow. There are two things in the whole conversation the many conversations we've had that could be started today. And whether this is the public education and community outreach, and then the landfill excavation and reclamation. At some point, I'll say to you, and I'll say this lightly, I don't know what the time frame is, haven't talked to them, but at some point, TDEC's going to come in and say, you got to close your C&D landfill. It's just going to happen. Again, they're not screaming, yelling, they're waiting to see as well. Public education and community outreach, what's going in Mac's Convenience Center containers, his roll-offs that doesn't need to be? What type of education can you do there? There's some little things. Y'all have already recognized the textiles have made, a big impact just in a short period of time without any public education. But these are two things that you could potentially do now, whether this is just using internal resources or finding folks. I know Mac has used folks at MTSU in the past. Whether this is finding a local marketing company. Don't know that you want to go to that until you know what you need to educate folks on the most. And then the landfill excavation and reclamation. We've done the RFI, we've done the RFP. Both of those have included this. We haven't gotten a whole lot of detail. I continue to have 2 or 3 companies that have asked, did you all make a decision? I think, the next step there, if you want to pursue that, would be bid specifications, to actually say this is what we want specifically. This is how we want it done specifically. Some of those steps are going to end up being, what do you want it to be at the end? So those are going to be some decisions to make before we would, submit those and actually ask for requests for for bids.
In a nutshell, what she just said was, we need to be specific in a set of bid specifications, in my opinion, and not just do a broad RFP. That's kind of what Mac alluded to a minute ago when Waste Management said, yeah, we'll do whatever you want, just tell us what you want. We weren't specific enough. Landfill Reclamation is a very detailed kind of a project, right? I mean, there's a lot of unknown. We've done drilling. There's a drilling report. It's still a crapshoot, but we need to be very specific about what we want to do, give them the history of our landfill, the best we know it, and then tell them what we want at the end. Like I said earlier, do we want to put a soccer field there, or do we want to put a lined cell there to restart our own landfill for our own use? So we need to determine that and put that clearly in some bid specifications so we can get some real contractors who know how to do this and are licensed to do this, who have history of putting in lined cells, if that's the direction we want to go. And like Becky mentioned, there are people that have done this and specialize in that. And those are the kind of folks we want to tap into, because we have all seen and have all approved every quarter, approximately, a request from MAC for dollars for leachate collection or disposal. And let's see, 7 years I've been a commissioner. It's not going to stop. We're liable for that until we're all deep in the ground. And then the rest of the world is responsible for it, and rest of the county is responsible. So at some point in time, we got to say enough's enough, rip the Band-Aid off, and let's fix it. So now's the time to see at least what it's going to cost us and reclaim that land for good. So if you want to continue more, but at some point in time, we're going to need to make a motion on what we want to do.
You'll have to look at those and make a decision if you want to do those now or move on.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
On the landfill, number one, that is the number one thing I've talked about for 4 years. So now with all this controversy that's going on with the landfill expansion, how does that work? If somebody comes in there, digs it up and moves it over to the right, which we'd have to do that, right? Because we don't have a liner. So how would that work permit-wise? I mean, is the regional board going to vote that okay?
Yes, if we have to go for a permit, then yes, the regional board would have to look at that. Right now, TDEC doesn't have any regulations on digging up a landfill. They just have regulations on putting stuff in it. So when we do our bid specs, we'll have to at least give them the courtesy of looking at it to make sure they're going to say grace over whatever we're going to try to do. But
does the current situation with Republic in any way makes this situation very hard? Does this, what I'm saying is, if they get turned down for their expansion, then how's TDAC going to say it's okay for us to dig it up and move it? Because is that not expansion?
I think part of that is it's not expansion. Basically, you would be using a different part of the footprint that's already there to just put in that space what's residual, what you can't recycle, what soil can't be reused elsewhere or sold. So you're just going to use a very small piece of that for the things in that landfill as it's dug up that aren't going to be able to be reused, recycled, sold.
I understand that. My question is this going to be a problem, getting a permit to do this? Because if it is, then we're in a serious situation. We got to pay more money each year to fix it. So is it going to go through? Is this like something, Mac, that you can simply say that this will go through and we'll get a permit and be able to do that?
Well, when I talked to TDEC about it, I made the argument, which they understood my argument. They said we'd have to do a lot of testing, but we still have a active C&D landfill permit. The Class 1, the old garbage, is gone. So if we test and there's nothing left in there but C&D type material, then we don't need another permit. We can dig up and move.
But Mac, we're still not totally closed. I mean, we're in that post-closure process, so it's not closed and finished, right?
The garbage landfill is closed and in post-closure. The C&D site is resting. It's not actually closed. We're just not accepting anything except brush and tires, which neither gets buried.
I think it gets into a legal question, though, because if has there ever been a landfill in Tennessee reclaimed? No. I don't remember anyone in the South being reclaimed. Maybe in other parts of the country, but I don't think TDEC has any guidelines of how to handle that. And then it would come down to what if the city, they were talking about the Jackson Law being applicable to the current landfill, then what would that do to us? You know, our argument would be the same as what they're saying is that we're grandfathered because our landfill was there before BFI ever came in, right? It's all up in the air. But what I do know is we got a ticking time bomb. Ours has no liner, and it's a matter of time before something gets into that water system.
I spent most of the morning out there with the TDEC inspector, and they were real pleased with what we've got going on. You know, we have the 2 sumps. Friday, we actually installed a new one and are ready to close one of the old ones, so now we only have 1 left. And we're gearing up tomorrow to start pumping on it and see if we can get that rectified too. And they're real pleased with all that. The closest thing to digging up a landfill in Tennessee is in Williamson County, where they have the bioreactor. They're using one of the cells to put their leachate in to try to treat it. And they've dug it up and put more garbage in it and started all over. You know, so they've removed stuff and put stuff back in. But I think that's a modification on their existing permit, not a new permit.
It was a modification, and it was a small portion. So it was almost like a pilot project, because they hadn't done it before.
If we excavated material out of our landfill on a highway truck and ran it to Jefferson Pike and turned into Republic, does Republic have to accept it?
They don't have to. They can choose to, but they will charge us for it.
I'm saying, just forget the agreement. I'm just saying, if trucks pull into Republic, do they check them and say, are we someone we're going to allow in here? Or if they know they're coming from our landfill, can they choose to take it or not?
Yes, they can.
I'm under the impression that they would charge us, right, Mike? I mean, Mac?
You know,
our hosting agreement is for trash collected at the convenience centers. If we dig up the landfill, no, they're not taking that for free.
Right.
Pretty standard. You would have to pay a tip fee for what's left.
Well, that's what we're talking about. If we set up a MRF, if the MRF went out on the landfill site and then we wanted to reclaim our landfill, then the stockpile of dirt goes over here, the trash that's been dug up goes through the MRF, and then whatever comes out the end that's got to be landfilled, then okay, we have to pay for it to be landfilled over there, but we got to know about that going in.
In theory, that makes a lot of sense. You wouldn't have to transfer it, but you're talking about stuff that's been in the landfill that's had daily cover of dirt placed on top of it for years and years and years. And if you put in a MRF with all the mechanized conveyor belts and mechanical chains and electronic processes, and you try to run dirt and recycled plastic bottles, what point does it all gum up and not work? You know, it's a whole different bird when you start talking about
It definitely had to be some sort
dirty
of
trash.
screening.
Huh?
Like it'd have to be some sort of screening, like a rock pile or something.
Have to
so
wash
dirt
it.
falls out of the bottom, and the trash goes over here, and then it's gone through the process for sure.
I ways, it's almost more like separating C and D material than it would be
Right.
MSW. Household waste.
Our landfill should have 2 foot of final cover and or 2 foot of cover, and then 6 inches of topsoil.
Didn't
When
that,
we-
didn't that core sample?
But those core samples showed, yeah, we had 12 foot of dirt.
Got 12 foot
Well, that's
dirt
where
on
I'm
top.
going.
Yeah.
When we dug the hole Friday, we were expecting to dig 2 feet deep and hit garbage. We didn't hit garbage till we got past 6 feet. And then when we kept going, we wound up going a full 20 feet before we got any liquid whatsoever. And that most of what came out of that hole was dirt. And when they were digging up the dirt, they were putting it over here. When they was digging the garbage, they was putting it over here. We carried some dirt up there before we ever started in case we created that vent. And we had to, just like plumbing, and we had the hole start, and then we'd have dirt to plug it with. We've got enough dirt there to refill that hole. So there's, the mayor's right. You start digging up our landfill, you're going to wind up with a whole lot of dirt.
Which is in high demand. Yeah. So, bottom line, Becky, this may be the first in Tennessee, but this would not be the first landfill reclamation in the U.S., correct?
No, it's not, yeah.
So there's plenty of folks that have done it that we could look to for knowledge and information. All right.
On the reclaiming of the landfill, and we keep going back to putting in a liner and burying back what we can't do something else with, will there not, even if it's put in with a liner in it correctly, covered, closed, capped, will there not still be an expense of having that on our property, like leachate haul off and so forth?
Yes, you will wind up, if you do just what you just said, then you're going to have 30 to 50 years of post-closure care.
I think we would really want to weigh that option out versus hauling it away from our property versus putting it back in correctly. It's my opinion.
The term reclamation means to fully excavate it and create. What's the outcome of reclamation? A certified new landfill or a
Soccer field.
soccer field? What is reclamation? I just want to make sure we're on the same page.
Yeah. Well, that's what we need to decide.
Turn it in, okay.
Yeah.
But the word reclamation, does that mean, and Jay, or an engineer may have to answer, does reclamation mean
Reclamation is reclaim.
Claim it, yeah.
into
Is
a
reclaiming-
non-landfill item, right?
That's correct.
As opposed to, okay, that's number one. Reclamation is turn it into a non-landfill. Is that the
Reclaim.
correct term we're all going to use?
That's my opinion. Reclaim everything that's in it and put it back.
Everything goes away, yeah. Reclamation, first definition is excavate, remove anything that's deemed solid waste, and keep the dirt
Well, the dirt that you dig up is probably going to be deemed contaminated.
Sure.
So are you going to ship it out, or are you going to rebury it, or what are you going to do with it?
There you go. So how far down this list, what's our definition? Take everything out that's contaminated and export it. Is that reclamation? Take everything out and export it. Everything that's deemed contaminated must be exported.
They've passed a law that, of course, like Mike said, it has to be tested, but some of that contaminated soil can be used under commercial for compaction, commercial construction.
The Nashville Airport expansion, they use contaminated soil there.
Airport runway.
That is the true definition. Reclaiming it back to raw land. Not to a non-landfill, yeah.
No contaminated material, no solid waste, no trash, that equals reclamation.
Yeah.
I'll jump in and say, I don't know what the term is, so now that I've clarified that, the other process is excavate, reline and rebury the contaminated part, and now you've got a mini landfill okay, so that reclamation would need an export permit, perhaps. We don't know that. Perhaps the bidder simply has to incorporate the cost of export. That includes permitting. If we export all contaminated material, that's a step. If we choose to rebury, does that equate to, or does that require a new TDEC Class 1 landfill permit?
After you do the testing, it may not necessarily be Class 1. It may be Class 3 or 4.
Okay, do we have to get a new TDEC permit, Class 1, 2, 3, or 4, to rebury material out of our existing landfill? To rebury it on a new liner, is it a new TDEC permit, the same process that Republic's going through?
Not necessarily. Depends on how we phrase it and how we do the operation. We still have space in the C&D site. So if we start digging it up first and then put a liner right there, ours never had a liner in it, but if we came up with bare soil again, they would want us to put a liner. So then you could possibly pull it off that way without getting another permit. It'd be hard, but it's possible.
If we have C&D material, perhaps we could bury it because we have a C&D permit currently. That's another theoretical, based on the outcome of a test, of an analysis of what's in there.
What's the chance of a geologist or TDEC saying that this dirt is suitable for reuse or selling it to Republic to use for cover, or putting it on top of our C&D landfill? Is that a chance?
All of those are chances. It's just stuff that we haven't done it in Tennessee yet.
Yeah.
And when it was done in Georgia, they dug it up and they put what needed to be landfilled across the road in a new landfill, subtitle D landfill. And all the dirt that they dug up, they used as cover dirt next door. 5 years after they cleaned that site up, all the groundwater monitoring went back to what it was before the landfill was ever built to start with. That's our goal.
Would we need the material, some of the material we excavate, would we need it to place back in the hole to bring it back to a final elevation and clean site? I would think we would have insufficient material to bring it back to a finish. Well, we could probably balance it. We could balance it probably.
You can keep whatever you want, and it depends on what you want it to be in the end.
Yeah, we could. I'm sure we could balance it. I'll retract that question. I think we could achieve
easily,
create a balance.
Or you can make a lake, make a fishing pond for all the kids.
I keep hearing us having to do this. We definitely have to reclaim?
No. This is something we've always kicked around to get out of the liability of being a landfill owner that has no liner, which we are constantly throwing money on in the 30-plus years that we have to keep the leachate. What are we spending? Like $100,000 a year or something like that?
This year was a little less, and then we got behind. We actually spent more money than we had in the budget by the time we finished up. So we were pretty close to $175,000, $200,000 just to dispose of leachate. And in the last month, we've hauled our own with our own tank and truck to Murfreesboro, which they've been gracious enough to accept it, not charge us anything. But that's 4 loads a day. So that's about 1,000 gallons a day.
So if you compare the
10,000 gallons
the expense to look after it and care for it and nurture it, I guess, in a way, compared to what it's going to take to reclaim it, how do those numbers compare?
That's what we don't know.
We did the GBB study. Triad, which is our landfill consultant, was also part of their team. Everything was based on an 11-year period, because at that time is when we thought Middle Point had 11 years of life. So to close our landfill and to maintain it, to mow it, to take care of the leachate, you go back and fix any erosion issues, any settlement issues and everything else. In 11 years, we were estimated to spend $30 million. So if we can dig that thing up for anywhere south of $30 million, we're a whole lot better off, because that was just in 11 years, and then you start all over for the next 11.
Put on there on one of the questions on landfill reclamation, if someone else does this, hold us harmless as far as transferring of the liability. So if Republic did it, then they own it. If we did that, if we went in that direction.
If Public
Back
was,
to my understanding, it was $14 million to do what we wanted to do. Is that still a good number for us, for this committee?
I think so. Our core drilling is a big variance on how much dirt versus how much trash. So we've got the amount of cubic yards that's there, but we don't know how much of it is dirt and how much of it is trash.
I had 20 million in my notes, but so somewhere, let's say 15 to 20,
I would think
I'm
it would
not
be
getting
an
a-
extreme expense to haul it out.
I know I've missed something. I'm not getting the math right. If we're saying 175,000 a year, I'd have said 200,000 a year times 30 years we got left to maintain. That's $6 million. So where am I missing it?
You still got to do all the operational piece of maintaining, mowing, cutting the grass, building up the settlement areas and all the drainage issues. And
175,000.
that's just our leachate amendments that budget has had to do.
Okay.
Correct?
All right.
So Craig, your logic, some of your logic says if, as opposed to the cost of hauling it all off, we need to consider the cost of creating a newly permitted sale for the contaminated material.
Yes.
Would
But
you
the
want-
key word in my entire goal is hold harmless Rutherford County. That is exactly where I'm going at. So if someone wants to reclaim it, we want them to take the liability off the county. That's what I'm looking for.
So if it's a new sale, if it could be deemed, whoever did the excavation would assume liability for that sale.
Yes, but if we had to
Still
fix
on
it
the land.
ourselves, then my question that started all this was, if we had to do it right, which is dig it up, put a liner down, put it on that liner, do we have to have a permit for that? And I don't see how you cannot have a permit for that. That's if we do it. I'm just saying if company comes in and does that, then it's different. If we have to do it, we still have the liability. But we have a liner now, so that decreases our liability tremendously.
Well, you know what's in it. You know what you put in it.
And the owner, whoever has ownership, is the one that owns the liability. So we can't give the liability to somebody that just is a contractor.
Be very clear about where what items you want them to carry where. Certain materials need to be handled this way based on special waste definitions for the state and that type of thing, depending on what they find.
So is it appropriate to get a cost on putting it on a liner and get cost on taking it next door or wherever?
Yeah.
So that's what you've got there in 3?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Cost analysis, compare building a new cell versus off-site disposal. You just can't see it. That's okay.
I don't know
If they're not going to get an expansion next door, they're not going to take that trash. Would have enough to close them.
Remind me of the anticipated total cubic yards. We quantified the cubic yards, Mac. We had width, length, and depth.
Trying to remember, that number is 400 million cubic yards, wasn't it, Craig? Something like that?
That's not all trash, though. That's dirt. And
You thought how many?
I think it was 400 to 800 million, I think was the numbers in it.
All right, so we've chatted about this for 20 minutes. Oh, yeah.
How is you said how much, 400 million? How does that compare, and I may be letting all my ignorance out right here, but how does that compare to metric?
What's your,
As stated, they've got 28
tons.
million metric tons in their landfill today. Compared to our landfill, is that not a whole lot larger?
Yes, theirs is a whole lot larger. Our total acreage for our landfill is 72.5 acres, and theirs is 200 plus. Well, that's not true. They're on 200 plus acres, but not all of it's actually landfill.
So you don't know how a metric ton would compare to a cubic?
I do not.
Okay.
so let me ask this question to the committee. Do we want to put a motion together for Becky to prepare a bid spec, and knowing that probably a detailed bid spec will take, I don't know, pick a number, 20 grand plus to put together? Or do we want to have her give us a price on what that would cost us?
May I answer that with a question?
Yeah.
Becky, would you suggest that we, is it beyond our skill set and yours to create a bid spec to that extent, or would you suggest we could we potentially be advised to hire a third party, a triad or somebody, to create the bid specs for us?
It'll be in conjunction. I'm perfectly capable of doing bid specs, but for engineering specifics and geology specifics, I would prefer someone from Triad to do that. And they're already under your contract with you all as a third party.
Is Triad
They did the drilling, right?
did they do the cores we
Core
have?
drilling, yes.
The 15 cores?
Yes, Triad is our consultant engineering firm for the
That's their
landfill.
specialty.
Can they give us a budget, an approximate budget based on a four-line scope of what we kind of want before
Can
we?
ask them.
A budget to consult, or a budget
Yeah,
to?
what a consulting fee would be, or to write a technical specification, or a bid spec, I should say. I mean, I don't know if this is a $5,000 item or a $40,000 item.
Create the
bid
final
spec.
RFP.
Yeah.
All we're doing is burning time, but
Or
can we?
wouldn't they need to come here and we tell them exactly, as a majority committee, what we would want? Or here's A, give us a price for that, B, give us a price for that, and what would you charge to put that together?
Yeah, I mean, I think the base bid would be take it down to raw land, seed it, and turn it back to us like we were going to build a soccer field. The bid proposal, then the add-on, or yeah, I guess it would be an add-on. What's a proper term? Oh yeah, alternate A would be the bid price plus so many thousand square feet of liner to do a type, and again, how do we know, type 1 or 2 or 3 landfill?
I'd like to see Mac put a bid in on this.
Who?
Mac. I'd like to see him do it because he knows all these numbers, and then we see what the county might actually have to pay. Because just for all y'all want to know, 1 cubic yard is 1.5 tons. So you can get an idea of how much is we'd have to ship. That's a number we. I mean, you see where I'm going with this, Mac? So if we had to do this ourselves, we got to have those numbers. We don't even have a clue. I don't know. You know, Phil says 20 million. I say 14 million. I don't know. I know that we got a lot of dirt and a lot of trash, and if we ship, you're looking at what, $60 a ton to ship it?
Depends on where you go and how far you're taking it, and what your tip fee is when you get there.
You know, if you got 200-300 million cubic yards of trash, it's pretty expensive. So, I mean, I'd like to see let's do our job as a county, solid waste department, do a bid on how much it'd cost to fix this, just like any other person, and so that we have an idea of what we as a county might be facing. Because we don't know those numbers right now. I mean, I'm just throwing a number out there. Man, I could be way off, I could be off millions. But that's one of the things I want to look at. Now, same goes for these guys too. I mean, it's the same bid. I just like to see us have those numbers too.
Basically, you're putting in a bid. Rutherford County is putting in a bid for their own bid specs so that they can essentially compare to the other responses.
Yes. Basically, that's it.
Yes.
Yes.
I just wonder if we need to get that outside consultant to help us put that budget together.
That's up to Mac. I'd leave that up to Mac as far as what he wants to. He's a solid waste department head, and he kind of knows what we're looking at anyway. He knows what we're trying to do, so that's up to him. If he needs a consultant, then he can, that's something he can bring, forward to this committee, or bring it to the chairman. Actually, that would be up to him whether we vote on it or not.
Craig, I still think it'd be worth a phone call to Triad, who's got all the dimensioning of our landfill, and just say, hey, you know the dimensions, you know the height, you've done the drilling. Can you throw us a ballpark on what a fee for a spec might cost, and just see what they say?
That's a fee to spec the engineering, or a fee to do the spec sheet for the proposals. And then secondarily, you also want somebody to start telling us what is that gross cost. Give us a better range than you and I spitballing it, whether that's Mac or this engineer. Give us a anticipated cost to do the job, but also an anticipated cost to put together the bid specs.
And I want Mac to put bid on 2 things. Number 1 is digging up our landfill and lining it and putting it in a lined area. That's the first thing. The second thing is find out how much cubic yards is inside this thing for us to ship, and how much would it cost for us to ship it out and be done with the landfill. So it'll be 2. Can you do that, Mac, or am I putting too much on you?
You're basically asking Mr. Nolan to do what we're asking these people to bid
Yes, I
on.
am.
Because he does not have the manpower or the ability to do any of that without getting outside bids to do, I'd say 100% of what you're asking him to do. So we're duplicating our process.
But we're not guaranteeing that we're going to do. Okay, let me try this. We both agree that landfill is a problem. We're correct, right? It has no liner, so that's a major problem. Okay. Yes, I want to bid this out, and I hope that we can get this, but we might not can make a deal. It might be us. We might have to fix it. So I'd just like to know those numbers as far as if the county has to do it.
It'll basically be the same numbers because Mr. Nolan will probably have to ask the same people that turn in an RFP on this project to do it because there's probably not that many that do it anyway.
Well,
I'm not wanting to argue with you.
no, I'm not arguing with you. I just think that, we need to know how big it is. You got those opportunity to speak to people to find out how many cubic yards we got in there. You do have that ability, right? So you also have the ability to tell us how much it costs to ship it. Would you be able to tell us that?
I'd have to call.
And then what we're looking at is how much would it be for us to do it ourselves? Now, I know you're saying, well, I'll just get these guys to do it. Well, we might not be able to reach a deal there. Does that make sense? Okay. Does that help? Good.
There's still so many unknowns. I don't know how we can really put a firm number on it. Because once you excavate it, where are you going to put it? You going to put it right next door? I mean, what do you do with it? Every scoop you dig out, where's it going?
Well, that brings us all the way back to where I started. We have to have a permit? Can we get a permit?
Yeah.
I mean, all that stuff is, we don't know.
Yeah.
And so, as far as the hauling, as far as hauling and disposal, you can get a contractor, you can have the contractor get a contract for that piece, if that's the chosen path, whether that's to Middle Point or wherever. Contract for
Would it be
this.
appropriate I'm going to consider a motion rather than making it. I'm considering to make a motion to have Triad, whether they come in here, Wayne, or write up a scope and give us a scope to create these specs, some kind of scope. I just don't know if it needs to go through Becky or, yeah, it has to go, because you can't do it and I can't do it. I make a motion that Becky reach out to Triad and put together the cost to create a scope to create bid specs to reclaim our landfill.
I got it.
I'm working on it here.
Second.
And so I'm sorry, Rachel, I need to clarify that. Commissioner, that you seconded my motion. I'd like to, that motion would be for Caldwell Engineering and Triad to present to us a cost of their services to give us a scope of work for the reclamation. I'm adding Caldwell Engineering to that. Becky doesn't have a budget for us to pay her in.
We have a motion and a second. Does everybody understand that motion?
Read the motion.
Motion to request Caldwell Services to reach out to Triad to present a cost of services for their bid specs to reclaim the landfill.
Sure. Yes, it's a package deal. Yeah, Caldwell Services
Caldwell Services and Becky are one and the same.
and Triad. Yeah. Are you good? Okay. You understand the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries.
And what would be a comfortable time frame for that? And is it something that's emailed out?
I'll reach out to them. I can reach out to them on Wednesday. I can actually reach out to them by email tomorrow and just see what I can get from them.
Our next meeting is in August. Yeah.
Would you be comfortable, and would this committee be comfortable receiving that in an email at its at an earliest date that it could be ready?
Yeah.
Are you putting a limit on how much money we're going to spend on this?
We're just getting a
Okay.
Yeah.
proposal.
Yeah, scope of work, what in the world, give me, what is that, I don't know how big the bucket is, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're not writing a check yet.
I think that'll help us kind of work through some of the logic you're bringing up of,
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Now, do we, all right. Do we want to chat about the education piece really quickly? Okay. Again, one of the things that Mac and Becky alluded to of things that we could do right now, regardless of any contract entering with 0 or all 5 of these potential candidates, would be the public education piece. We already talked about the landfill reclamation portion. So, again, Wayne talked about, do we need to do anything until February? And there was discussion about that. There was discussion about that I think the majority of this committee think that the public education piece needs to go forward regardless of what happens. Change the culture of the young, which will then also help change the culture of the old. And so how do we do that? And we know that that's going to cost some money. Do we, who's doing our public education now? We have talked to some of these bigger players, and they said, yes, we will provide a education piece. But again, is that something we can do on our own? Do we want to consider hiring a marketing firm to shore up some of that and give us really good exposure through multimedia campaigns and get people in the schools and public communities, organizations to help train? So these are all discussion points I'd like to chat about just for a minute. I don't know what it would cost to have a true marketing firm, or maybe even somebody being a group at MTSU in that marketing college to help put together a campaign. But, I got to think we need some outside help, professionals, if we're going to do this. So I just want to throw that out there for discussion.
I would like to see us do more in partnerships with Middle Tennessee State. We've got a diamond here in this community, and I'm not sure that we utilize them enough. Now, they get called upon all the time to do stuff for free, and they can't continue to do that. But if we're going to pay someone to pursue this, I would rather go to our university and utilize the expertise that they have, and we know they have because it's one of the finest universities in the nation. So I really would like for us to reach out to them and try to find an opportunity to utilize their expertise.
Mr. Chairman, I meet with Ashley McDonald on a weekly basis as our PIO, but part of her job when we hired her as a master PIO was also to work on the litter grant, to work in conjunction with picking up litter, trying to get that out on our mass media, all of our Twitter, our Facebook account, our website, etc. over the course, what she shared with me this morning is that she's been meeting over the course of the last 6 weeks with the curriculum supervisors of Rutherford County School System. They'll be, when they start back to school in a few weeks, they decided instead of going into the second grade, they felt like that because of all of last year, the teachers being away and not in the classroom, instead of going with the second graders, because some of those teachers, in their opinion, needed a little bit more control in the classroom, they felt they wanted to start at the 11-year-old age group. And so those curriculum supervisors will take the curriculum that we currently have and start that work this semester, fall semester. So any one of these 5 that are willing to come in and enhance what we're currently doing, and I think if we can bring MTSU in as well, we're getting the ball rolling, so whatever decision we make, we can enhance that and take it to change the culture is what we have to do. The way people think about how we deal with our trash at home, how we deal with it out here, and all your butts. I read an article just a week or so ago in a state magazine that said that cigarette butts is the largest pollutant of trash, and that the Tennessee River is the most polluted with the number of particles that come from the plastic cigarette butts of any river in the United States. But it all starts here, and we've got to start educating people. You know, you pull up to any red light in Murfreesboro and you see 1,000 cigarette butts, and that all gets washed down into the storm drains, and then it continues on. You know, all those carcinogens continue to go. But I think we're starting in the right place, and whoever comes in can pile on and just take it to the next level.
Does MTSU do they even do this?
I don't know. I was getting ready to ask Wayne that. Do you know somebody, or can you find out what kind of? Okay, I think here's my question. If you can reach out and find out if there is a legit marketing strategy department, really maybe advertising, and then perhaps Ashley and the mayor and you, or Ashley, me, a small group, go sit down and have a conversation with them and just see if they have any thoughts about taking this idea to the county via school, social media, whatever, commercials. I mean, MTSU has the ability to make commercials with their communication. And then maybe we join a partnership, and we'd be willing to pay, obviously. I mean, any of these 5, they're going to do it, we're going to wind up paying anyway, right? They're not going to do it for free. So I like your idea about keeping it with an MTSU partnership. So if you can get something set up, I'm happy, I'm sure Ashley would be too, to go and sit down and at least pitch the idea to them and see if they have any interest at all in it. Okay? All right.
I think that also, speaking to building a foundation, I think that also starts to build the foundation so that whatever other decisions you make, other folks come in and help add to that and enhance it, as the mayor said.
I agree with Mary and Mr. Chairman, for talking about publication. At the Channel 3, they have 3 languages speaking: Laotian, Japanese, and Hispanic. So I think we will be able to help to spread out the word.
Educating the young is great. I agree 100%, but we've got to educate the elderly as well. to change the culture, we can't wait till these 11-year-olds get to where they're driving themselves to the convenience center.
Well, I don't think 11-year-olds are dropping cigarette butts either.
I hope not.
Now, I listen to WGNS occasionally, and it was either this morning or yesterday. They had the lady on from MTSU that does exactly what y'all just talked about. There's already a department that does all that, and they are also the ones that put stuff on the television channel for them. Now, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, Dr. Greenwood, her classes, she had 2 classes they took on Rutherford County Solid Waste to help figure us out to get a message. We'd always just come in, did our work, kept our head down, tried to stay quiet, and we were doing the exact opposite of what we needed to do. So that's how we got started with the interns and all that kind of stuff. So we've been on the path, but it was, that goal there was to try to get the educational side of the recycling done and why we do what we do.
Maybe you and Wayne can chat after class here and find a YouTube repeat or something like that. All right. Okay, so let's sum up. We have thrown together some thoughts, some ideas, some questions. We know where we are with what's going on in our county with TDEC and Republic, and we know some deadlines. We know where the Solid Waste Advisory Committee, what their decision was. So what does this committee want to do next, and when? Do we want to go ahead and bring I guess the easy one would be Pratt. Do we want to bring them in and have a conversation? Are we ready to do that? You guys tell me what your thoughts are and where you think we are in the process, and keep moving forward. I mean, I don't want to do nothing and wait till February, because that's not how we roll. So, well, to throw these questions together, so now that we've done that, we need to move forward. Yeah. So are we ready to go ahead and schedule a next meeting and invite Pratt? Okay, good enough. I just wanted to make sure we were all on the same page. Rachel, do you have a calendar in front? Oh, yes, of course you do. Oh, yeah. We do have one more item, so don't get excited that I'm getting ready to dismiss you. I don't think I brought my calendar in. Let's look at your calendars. Rachel, what do you have coming up that would be an opening for this solid waste subcommittee?
July the 28th.
All right. And, obviously we got to reach out to Pratt and see if they're available. July 28th. Why don't you go ahead and give us 3 or 4?
No Fridays, correct?
Yes, no Fridays.
Okay, the first thing would be July 28th, of course. August the 4th. August the 10th. We might could do August the 11th. BZA is the 11th. They've kind of been running over, so we might do 6 o'clock if we should choose the 11th.
Yeah, okay.
So, you think, this next one? Okay. So let's scratch the 11th. They've been running over quite a bit. Then the next would be the 16th.
All right, let's stop right there for a minute. Does anybody have any issues with any of those 4 dates? Okay. Speak up. Okay. All right, so 28th, the 4th, or the 16th. Anybody have any issues with those? Seeing none, would Becky, would you, or Mayor, would you reach out to Pratt and see if they are available for any one of those 3 dates for a 5:30 meeting? And let us know via email.
Do we want to go ahead and schedule some of the others, and I can do one legal notice and,
Yeah, that'd be fine.
okay.
Yeah, so both Pratt and Rockwood, thank you, Steve.
On the same night?
Or let's just fill the other, do we do same night, or we just fill the other spot? I guess give Pratt the first choice and then let Rockwood pick the other of the 2 dates. One for one night, I think, is plenty. Because then afterwards, we'll triage and figure out what we did right and did wrong.
Can we request them to bring numbers, like real numbers, on this meeting, or is this going to be more of exploratory and just ask these?
We can ask them to bring whatever.
I'd like to see figures. We're at the third and fourth stage. I mean, it's time we start, getting down to how much and all this.
We just got to, when you say that, we got figures based on what? They got to know what the what is.
Like, for instance, let's take waste management. If we want them to pick up curbside in a rural area, how much is that a ton? If we want, how much is it for you to do curbside for Rutherford County? How much is that a ton?
Yeah.
So what do you want from Pratt and Rockwood?
Okay, like for Pratt, I'd like to see what's the tipping fees for their ton, and also what percentage of that is, if we're sharing revenue, then what's the percentage? What are we talking about in dollars?
Okay.
Too broad.
Well, what if we just say it, give it to the, okay, we got a 46, you got a 46,000 ton, or is it 40, how much, 46,000, and then Murfreesboro's got 49 or 48, something like that?
That's trash. That's not recycling.
I'm very scared to do anything with Murfreesboro right now. I'm extremely timid because I don't know what they're going to do. I mean, I know the mayor's met with them, but they've not shown me that they're in. And so can I really negotiate with something I don't have? Can I really get a number of something I don't have? So I would say we need to have the numbers that they would charge us if it was Rutherford County.
All right, if you want to do that with Pratt, then what we need to do is pull our annual progress report for last year, for 2020, and how much would you have paid or can pay for this amount of cardboard, this amount of paper, this amount of plastic. Give them something to actually look at.
I'm 100%. I agree with that 100%. I mean, you understand where I'm coming with, right? We keep running around, well, we might be 50 ton. I need to know numbers because we're in a situation, we got to know every factor in this equation.
Well, our next processes, which is going to be multiple ones, is we need to narrow down to be able to tell these folks what we actually do want. We're still too broad. We're still shooting a shotgun. We need to be at target practice with a rifle.
Well, let's get to that point.
What would you like to hear from Rockwood?
Oh, gosh. I mean, the thing with Rockwood to me is we just don't know, we don't have that much C&D.
So the biggest question is going to be how can we build a partnership of construction and demolition?
Absolutely,
Okay.
yeah.
Got it. Yes. Till then.
Will you open that box, Steve? All right. All right. Write this email. No, I'm sorry, not email. Write this website down. Well, better yet, I don't have a website. Write this company down. MBL Technology. It should come up, Innovative Solid Waste Disposal. MBL, like Major Baseball League Technology, LLC. Oh, this entire booklet is on your SharePoint. Thank you very much. Right there, hold on. Okay, these folks were late getting their RFP in. The reason is because if you look at this box, it comes from Australia. Apparently it takes weeks to get stuff from the U.S. to Australia. But we had a virtual meeting with this fella, Matthew Linda. He's the brains behind the operation out of New Jersey. And they take, I'm going to say it's similar to Waste Away, because most of us have seen the Waste Away pellet, where they take solid waste, grind it up, and make a pellet. And if you'll remember when Becky went through the solid waste thing, one of the top lines was, hey, why don't you make the boards or the bumper blocks or the pallet stuff anymore? Well, these folks found to have a patent on that material on steroids. They take all the little baggies that you saw of waste, grind it up, and make building materials. In Australia, they make whole communities of houses out of this stuff for the homeless and underprivileged. You could make furniture. It's kind of like polywood. Every outdoor furniture you see now is made of polywood, very similar. It's also a lot like Trek board that you see on fancy decks now at your home. But they use it for roofing material, siding, everything. These whole houses that they're building, like mini, what do you call it? It's not mini houses, what's it called? Tiny houses. But they build whole communities out of this stuff, like I said, for the homeless and so forth. But it's pretty cool. And I say they treat it just like lumber. They glue it, they screw it, they do all kinds of stuff. And apparently according to Matthew Linda, it withstands the heat and the sun of Australia in the outback, which is pretty deadgum hot. I say all that to say I would highly encourage you to go to the website, take a look. If we want to chat with Mr. Linda, he's happy to fly from New Jersey to here to chat with us and show us this product, or get on a virtual call with us and do a little presentation. But, how cool would it be to have a little factory down here where they turn trash into building materials? Maybe not all of it, maybe some of it, but it'd be pretty cool. So, anyway, that's your assignment. Steve?
They're working on a location in Tennessee right now. I guess if you want them at one of these next meetings or whatever, we need to give them a contact. Or we need to contact them basically and have them to come here. If the committee is willing to open the door and have a presentation with what they're proving as far as building materials out of trash, we might want to give them an opportunity.
Okay. Perhaps we could have them come at the end of a Pratt or a Rockwood presentation?
Whatever he wants.
Okay.
Whatever you want to do. He was going to be here tonight, but I told him this was a work session meeting and really not to need to be here. And I hope I wasn't overstepping my bounds there because they were just being introduced.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Cool. All right. I really think this is worth listening to this guy because if you've played and looked at this product, can you imagine? I mean, hey, I'm not saying I'm going to build a house out of this, but I may build a fort or a deck or playground equipment or who knows. Yeah. I mean, instead of, if they're building homeless shelters, I don't not say I want to do that. I don't want to put a bunch of homeless shelters in Rutherford County, but I may want to have the materials here and ship it somewhere.
I really want him to do the presentation to all of y'all, but you were in that presentation. He said water, heat, nailing it, screwing it,
yeah.
gluing it, like you said.
Just like lumber.
Insects as well. Insects will not bother that, so no termites will, no mice will.
Yeah.
And that's pretty impressive with all this other stuff. So, I mean, and
With the cost of lumber,
Yeah.
2x4s not being exactly straight all the time, when they extrude a 2x4 out, every one of them's perfect.
They make some for thermal, you know, there's all
Thermal
kinds of
insulation,
things.
roof panels, it's pretty,
I don't remember. Steve, do you remember? I don't know.
we're in the process of building a plant in Oneida, Tennessee.
Anyway, if you're willing to listen to them, you want to have them come? Okay. We'll send an invite. Is that a motion? I need a motion. We need a motion. Yeah. Yes, go ahead.
Dr. Jordan.
Dr. Jordan, go ahead.
Yes, sir. I want to know.
Because you didn't score enough on the scoring sheet to.
I got the scoring sheet. The scoring sheet.
And I would like for your group to participate in that landfill reclamation proposal as it becomes more thorough and comes out. But to answer your overall question, you did not make the grade because this committee felt that there were a lot of promises with not a lot of backup details and a lot of information that was solid. It was a lot of what-ifs, but not a lot of solid proof or a lot of solid history of what you've done or could be done. It was a lot of, I can do this, we can do this, but it was a lot of talk, but not a lot of proof that it could be done. Well, I don't know what happened 4 years ago, but this, yeah, and you talking about 4 years, yeah, 4 years, you talking about 4 years ago when you met with, and the gentleman from the Middle East or whatever? Okay, yeah. Right. Yes, I do recall that. Yes, we were not, yes, but there was more to that than just reclaiming the landfill. The plasma gasification system was a lot more than just reclaiming the landfill. Okay, you're not listening to me. We had no interest in doing the plasma gasification system because it was not proven. We were not going to have that here, and we were not going to be the guinea pig. I'm done with this discussion because I'm telling you why. I'm telling you why you didn't get invited back. Because it was a lot of talk, but not a lot of solid data about what you could do, or a lot of history about what you could do. You talked to us at length about all the things you thought you could do.
You saying thought, that's a thing. I got facts.
We didn't see any facts. Thank you. Any other questions? We'll see you next week, or whenever we get the... Oh, we need a motion for MBL.
Make a motion so that we can include them on a, let them come in here and make
Add
a,
them to the presentation
Yes.
list on a date to be named.
Who seconded?
Steve Piercy.
Thank you.
We good?
One of these days.
All those in favor of adjourning the meeting? All right. Thanks for your participation, everybody.
You got a motion on?